Okay, the City of Marine City Commission meeting is called to order on Thursday, February 15th at 7 o'clock p.m. We have a moment of silence to send our positive thoughts and prayers to those in our community that need our support. Now please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, can I have roll call, please?
Commissioner Bryson.
Here.
Commissioner Hendrick.
Here.
Commissioner Clausen.
Here.
Commissioner O'Brien. Here. Commissioner Rory.
Here.
Commissioner Ross.
Here.
Mayor Vandenbosch.
Here.
City Manager Atkins.
Here.
Okay, under item 4 for approval of the agenda, can I have a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
So moved. Support.
Motion and the support, any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? It carries. On to item 5 for presentations, proclamations, and recognitions. We have first item A, Caleb Rickert recognition. So tonight, and actually Caleb, you want to come up here, please? Thank you. And if you want to turn around and everybody. So I prepared to read a few things about Caleb for everybody and why he's being recognized tonight. And tonight that's because of on his achievements and that he's showing a positive light in our community. Caleb is a Marine City High School freshman. He rides in BMX sports competitions, but we don't necessarily hear about all of his accomplishments because it's not a sport that's organized through the school, so we don't necessarily get the announcements such as the other school sports that we get. Caleb's team in BMX is the American Soldier Network, also known as the ASN. It's a national team that represents military and first responders. And just some of the highlights of Caleb's recent stats and accomplishments include that he's competed in 56 races with 39 first place wins. He's earned 3rd place in the Waterford Oaks BMX racetrack for all male riders. And he's placed 3rd overall in district, scoring over 6,136 points out of 373 male riders from May to December of 2023. And Caleb is also currently holding the 1st place in state series for the state champion for 14 expert level in BMX. Wow. So congratulations on that, Caleb. And now, on behalf of the City Commission, it is my honor to present you with a Certificate of Achievement. It states that this certificate is presented to Caleb Rickert, recognition of extraordinary performance and achievement in the area of BMX racing, motocross sports, and for your exemplary representation of the American Soldier Network national team that supports military and first responders nationwide. It is presented by the Mayor and City Commission of Marine City, February 15th, 2024. Thank you very much. And now, 5B is the Historical Society of Marine City Endowment Fund presentation.
There you go. Got a little something for everybody here.
I do. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, I'm Georgia Phelan. I'm with the Historical Society here in Marine City, and we are have actually already started work on this new endowment fund for the City of Marine City, and very specifically for maintenance for the historic City Hall building. We were encouraged by the creation of the 300 Broadway Committee and the applications for grants for the reuse of this building. And this is something we'd been talking about and decided the time was right to get this started now. So the purpose of the maintenance fund is for larger scale items that might come up, down the road. Things like that, it would be items that address the structural and the architectural integrity of the building. And not routine maintenance things, but larger things. So when it needs a roof again, if it needs tuck pointing, that kind of thing. Now, it won't be available for a while because we have a goal of about $250,000, what we're looking at. We'd like to do that in 3 years. We'll see where that goes. But we wanted to make sure that the City Commission was aware of what we're doing. We are partnering, with the 300 Broadway Committee. We are partnering with the Community Foundation. I wanted to read this. I'll read the first paragraph that's in here because it says pretty clearly what we're doing. Recognizing the need for a permanent maintenance fund for Historic City Hall, the Historical Society of Marine City is pleased to announce the creation of a new endowment fund within the Community Foundation of St. Clair County to provide this funding in perpetuity. Exterior renovations are completed on the building and interior restoration and funding are ongoing, but to maintain and protect this important city asset, maintenance must be assured. Most importantly, a maintenance plan means the city can continue to move forward to reuse. So that is what we're working towards. We are just in the beginning stages in a capital campaign. They would refer to this as the quiet phase, where we're not out beating the bushes, for money. We are putting together some partnerships. We are looking for our major donors that would be in at the beginning of this project. So we wanted to make sure that you're aware of that. If there are any resources that you're aware of that we might, approach for this, we'd certainly love to hear that. And we just want to make sure that everybody knows what everybody's doing and we keep things going. We have been to the 300 Broadway meeting. Brian has been coming to our Historical Society meetings. So we're going to keep this, communication going. And we just want to make sure that people have accurate information about what's going on and what the purpose of this is and why we're doing it. So later on, probably towards the early summer is when we'll go more public with this. But it is, even though we're in the organizational stages right now, we have already received some funding for this. And we're actually getting close to about 10% of that. So this is something that's already underway in some ways, but we are still organizing the rest of it. But we just wanted to make sure that you are all aware from the very beginning and outset what's going on. And I don't know if you have any questions, and we'll try to address those as best we can about this. And I might mention that this money will always be, the Historical Society will always be directing this funding. So when things came up, it would be to us to go to the Community Foundation to request the money. It would be taken out in turn to be used for the building. So we just want to make sure that, after all the work that's been done already, and hopefully more work's going to be done, down the line for the interior, that we're never in a situation where it needs a major work done on it, and there isn't funding for that. So that's our goal, and we're just getting started. And anybody who's interested in participating or wants more information about it can get a hold of myself. Heather Bachram's here with me. I can give you a phone number real quick, too, that if somebody wanted to call, it goes to an answering machine, but I get those every day, 810-765-3665. I'd be happy to answer questions or give you more information. And people can also contact the Community Foundation directly. Yes?
When doing this, these projects, are you going to be presenting those projects first to the commission?
Oh, yeah, we intend to be working together, certainly. It's not our building,
Yes.
but we desire to help maintain it.
Yes.
So it's always going to be something that we work with the city,
Okay.
So, anything else I can answer right now? Okay, and I might mention that the Historical Society on their part have, last year, they helped get the fund started with $6,000 that they put into it. And they have committed to each of the 3 years of the campaign of putting a minimum of $4,000 more into it. So that's for certain. So we'll probably, when all is said and done, we're going to be close to $20,000 in it ourselves.
Would you be potentially the Historical Society looking for the city to make a resolution to, make you official in terms of the,
We may at some
Maintenance
point.
fund, yeah.
Yeah, at this point, I don't think it's necessary, but when we get the money starts getting it to where we're going to start thinking about actually doing something or whatever, we can come back and we can get that all squared away, whatever's necessary to make it work. I know.
Okay. But yeah, thank you for putting all that together.
Okay. Yeah, well, it seems like I always have something cooking. I felt like I retired, but I guess that was just retired from getting paid, okay? All right, thank you. We look
you.
forward to working with you in the future.
Okay, on to item 6, public comment. Anyone is welcome to address the city commission. Please state your name, limit your comments to 5 minutes. Commission will not respond, but will follow up as necessary. And I want to remind everybody before they come up that you're supposed to address to the commission, to myself as the chair, not anybody else in the audience, and nobody from the audience address anything, disrupt the person speaking. Okay. Now, who would like to go? Mr. Walkers?
Well, good evening, Madam Mayor and Commissioners. Thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to speak. I'm a 35-year resident of Marine City. It's a beautiful town. Retired police chief from Shelby Township in Macomb County. I think most of you know my resume or my background, and I want to have my last opportunity. I've been speaking on this for probably at least a year. My last opportunity to try to persuade you to think about what I've always been bringing up, and that's the kids, because that's what it's all about. It's about the kids. I don't have a problem with adults who want to smoke marijuana. It's legal in this state. And if they want to smoke marijuana, it's easy to get. Pour it here on, can have it delivered to their house, whatever. But what I'm concerned about, the kids, and primarily really concerned about, is the edibles. Again, 10% of the municipalities in this state, that's just 10%, have marijuana dispensaries. What do the 90% know that we don't know? And a lot of them that we recently voted on were voted down. And I'm very comfortable if it was in Marine City, be voted down. We don't need a dispensary that's going to provide edibles that can get into the schools and with kids. The law's been on the books since 2018. Now, I know it took a while for things to get moving, but roughly 4 to 6 years, we don't have a marijuana place in Marine City. If it was that equitable, or it was that economically feasible, or if people really, really wanted it, we'd have it. Or we at least have a petition drive or a petition. None of that's occurred. So the idea that the commission has to grab a hold of this and run with it because they're afraid somebody's going to come in and bring in 5 marijuana pot stores in the town is a fallacy. So we don't have to do anything. We passed an ordinance unanimously to keep the pot shops out of our town. So we don't have to do anything. So all we're going through, all this discussion, all this money of the city attorney's paying to draft up these ordinances, and all this time for what? Makes no sense to me. Want to talk about law enforcement? That's my area. I was police chief, and I was in law enforcement for 40 years. I worked in Utica Community Schools. I was a DARE officer. I was a detective lieutenant. I worked narcotics. We have a good police department. Our police department's gone way up since I've been here 35 years. And the chief's doing a good job. However, he's not going to be able to babysit a pot shop on King Road or wherever it's going to be to make sure that edibles aren't going out the back door, that older kids aren't going in, or older adults, and buying it and giving it to young kids. It's going to allow edibles to come into our town and get into our schools. I've talked to, in the last year and a half, every principal, the superintendent, many adults, PTOs, those kinds of things. Nobody's in favor of having a marijuana dispensary coming into our town that's going to bring edibles. There's no way that the school can monitor those. When they come in at lunchtime and they have brownies and they have this and that and all that kind of things, the teachers can't monitor. When I went to school, they could monitor smoking. When my kids went to school, they could monitor marijuana in the bathroom. You can smell it, you can do it. They're sitting there during lunch eating a brownie. Who's going to monitor that? Those kids are going to be spaced out. Marijuana is a gateway drug. There's plenty of studies out there. You're going to get people to come up here and refute it. Look it up on the internet. Go to DEA, go to CDC, go to those. It's a gateway drug for sure. And now with edibles, we're only going to expand that. So you really need to think of our kids. they're your constituents too. It's not just the people that vote for you. It's the kids that you need to represent in this town. We don't need edibles. On top of it, when they come in and they get stuff at the pot shop, they're going to drive on our beautiful river, and they're going to sit across from the Catholic Church in that parking lot, or our playgrounds, or whatever, our parks, and they're going to get high, and they're going to drive out of town, or they're going to cause problems for law enforcement. Our chief does a great job. He can't babysit a pot shop. He doesn't have the manpower to monitor underage kids are going in and out, or sending in undercover people to see if they're paying attention to the law. We don't need it. My last thing I want to talk about, I raised 5 children, and they all did well, and they've all done well. My middle son, Andy, unfortunately, died of a drug overdose from fentanyl when he was a college student down in Charleston, South Carolina. It's a little emotional for me, but he started smoking pot on the Edison. And I understand as a parent growing up, and I raised 5 kids, you can't always monitor everything and what's going on. I'm not saying nothing's ever going to happen in this town, but bringing this in makes no sense at all. 80,000 to 100,000 people have died from fentanyl in 1 year. I guarantee a fair amount of them started out on pot. Think of the kids, think of your grandkids, your own children, and please don't pass this ordinance. Thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Paul Yankee. I'm not going to burn up a lot of time telling you who I am. I'm just ex-drug enforcement officer and police officer, detective as well. I was a DARE officer. I just want to just share these things with you. Everybody likes the internet. You want to get on the internet, just get on the internet and start checking the places where they've made these dispensaries, put in these legal dispensaries, and you will see that their emergency rooms are overrun now with marijuana psychosis. Over half of the cases that they're getting in a lot of these areas are marijuana psychosis. And guess what? Almost half of those are kids as well. And these are legal facilities. Oh, by the way, my congregation that I had in Pennsylvania, a young man there, 30 years old, I say young because I'm 64, smoked marijuana from a legal dispensary, and it was laced with fentanyl, and he's dead. Okay, and that was a legal, quote-unquote, legal facility. And this stuff is pouring over our southern border right now, and they're just lacing the drugs with it, and I'm sorry, folks. This is idiotic to even consider having this here. It's absolutely ludicrous. And I just speak the truth. You know me well enough, and I'm going to tell you something. The liberals, the idiotic politicians that are pushing this stuff and making this legal, there's all kinds of other stuff behind it, people. All kinds of other stuff. Chaos, raising heck, our government, look at the mess that we're in. And all of these things that they're pushing, and the drugs as well, it's just to cause chaos. It's not for the benefit of those who really want this stuff, you know, that want to smoke it. They can get it anyways, you know, as was just stated before my coming up here. So I just pray, you know, for our kids, that, you know, as already was stated, we don't need this. You have an ordinance, just stand on that ordinance. Or if you're going to do something, make it so strict that they can't come in here. I beg you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Who'd like to be next?
Michael Frank. Reefer Madness is alive and well, I tell you. Mr. Wilkers, I absolutely appreciate your tenacity every time you come up here.
Mr. Hillfrank? You have to direct it at us.
I'm not looking there, but okay. I appreciate the tenacity of the gentleman coming up here every time and saying the same exact things over and over and over. But you directly contradict what you're saying. You're saying it's fine to bring it back here. It's fine to get it delivered here, but somehow the stuff that gets brought back here and delivered here isn't going to make it to the kids? That doesn't make sense. It doesn't make any sense. another thing doesn't make sense, is it's not about, if the pot's gonna be here anyways, right, which 2 people just got up here and admitted, if it's gonna be here anyways, then we might as well collect the 50 grand a year in tax revenue from each business. Why not? It brings traffic, it brings people, and where do those people go? They go to other businesses to spend money. It's common sense. On to the next thing. Mr. Atkins, our city manager here, for those who don't know, came from Roseville, population of 46,000 people. He headed up that place with a lot of personnel. I remember reading his resume, and that was a bullet point on there. It was, I forget the number of personnel that he was in charge of, but it was a pretty big number. I mean, obviously we only have 4,000 people here. It's not a big city, what's it, 4 department heads? And there seems to be an issue with his ability to manage his department heads. I came to this podium a couple months ago talking about the police station not being open during business hours. Well, it's happening again. It happened to me a few weeks ago. It happened to another person that reached out to me just recently. They went up there, had to take an hour off work early to go up there to pay a parking ticket, and now they have to do it again because the place was not open till 4 o'clock like they're supposed to be. That's unacceptable. Like, our city government buildings need to be open during the posted business hours. It's embarrassing. There's no reason for it. And this is the second time I've come up here to talk about this. And there's a lot of other issues. The beach bathroom that we thought we were gonna flash in because the city manager didn't put the estimate together correctly. It wasn't flashed in, it was just painted. So now we got a 50-year metal roof with just painted wood flashing. Like, how does that make sense? Like, let's go spend extra money on a 50-year roof instead of a 30-year roof, but then not do the job correctly to make it actually last 50 years. It just doesn't seem smart. Same thing with the weed whacking in the cemetery. Came up here to talk about that. Did that get fixed? Nope. Walked through there, still same grass around the graves, not being weed whacked. Did Bob have something to add there? I don't know. So that was weird. That was a weird interaction.
I kind of hit his leg, I'm sorry, sir.
Oh, okay.
So, with my chair. A little tight.
So yeah, we have some issues with the management in this town, absolutely. I noticed going by the water plant, it still wasn't sprayed off. Like you'd said in a meeting numerous times that the disgusting black mold looking stuff oozing down the side of the building was gonna be sprayed off. Was that done? Nope. Come on. I know there's other stuff going on, but if you say you're gonna do something, do it. That's what good management is, chief. If you say you're gonna keep the doors open because you just hired a new office manager, do it.
Mr. Hillfrank.
And the last, I just got 2 questions that hopefully I can get answered. What's going on with Washington Life Center property? Maybe that'll be discussed during the ARPA discussion tonight, I don't know. But it'd be really great to, get that plaque moved to an actual community center and, follow the family's wishes there and get this community center going. And I know in our discussions, that's where it was gonna be, was the Washington Life Center. I think it'd be a great spot, nice big pavilion, splash pad. It'd be a great community center. I did have another question too. What was the other one? Doesn't matter. I'll just leave it at that. Thanks.
Anybody else like to speak?
I came to this town 50 years ago, a young man, and I bought in Marine City because that's what I could afford. The housing here was now, at this time, average is probably over 100 years of age. The incomes of the people in this community are modest, but they're good people. Now, when I first came to town, I soon learned that Marine City was known for 2 things: bar brawls and public urination. Now, we've come a long way. And by the way, when I got here, the city commission had just been removed because they screwed up the application for public funds for upgrading our waterfront. So this city has crawled its way up to where we have a very respectable business community. We have Heritage Foundation. We have this, in spite of itself, it's improved itself every year. people buy old houses and fix them up. Now, we don't have to, every county might need a slum, but we don't have to be a slum. But we are a very fragile community. And if you start encouraging businesses and getting a reputation, you know, of people overdosing or rowdiness on the waterfront, you're going to injure the restaurant business in this town. You're going to reduce the community housing worth for the private residents, and I'll be one of the people coming in here asking you to drop the valuation on my property. So I hear these numbers, $50,000. Well, I keep looking for that, but what I see is there's an excise tax of about 10%, but that doesn't go to the city. 35% goes to the state roads, 35% for the state schools, 15% to the county, and you get the crumbs. But you also get the traffic, and you get a degradation of the valuation on other properties because people coming into town are going to see this traffic you're praising and say, what are they doing? Well, they're getting candy and they're going down and smoking up down on the riverfront. So don't let your kids go down there because they're liable to buy something down there that's going to kill them. So for goodness sakes, you know, there's no rush on this. Wait a few years if you have to, or maybe even longer. Wait till we find out just what this does to the communities where they have encouraged that. See what happens to the psychosis that they now predict. And you know, we started out with smoking when I was a young kid, 15 years old, had to have a cigarette. Quit at 30, thank God, because I'd probably be dead by now. My older brother died of it. So, but you know what? The people who were proponents of cigarettes until President Clinton came along, claimed no relationship between that cigarette and heart failure and lung cancer. Oh, no. You can't prove that. Well, thank God we turned it around. Try and buy cigarettes out of a vending machine now. You can't even buy them up at the CVS because the communities have realized this isn't good for the general population. Yeah, you can get cigarettes, you can smoke, but let's not encourage it. Let's not try to make profit from it because there is no profit unless you take a look at what else it will affect. And one thing it will affect is the property valuations in this town. Because if you hurt the reputation, and you will, if you encourage building a dispensary here, you know, not doing it at St. Clair, you know, they'll all come down here to buy their pot. They're not going to smoke it up there on the fancy waterfront. They'll be down here smoking it in our little parks. And if they bring along their underage girlfriend, yeah, sure, you can have some. Or maybe their younger brother, yeah, I'll get some for him too. So it's going to creep in, and we're going to be responsible for the deaths of somebody in this town because we are encouraging this nonsense about having to have a dispensary.
Sir, can I just ask you your name, please, so we have it for our record?
Sure. Name's Daniel Levere.
All right.
Lavere.
Thank you, Mr. Levere.
Thank you, Madam Mayor.
Anybody else like to speak?
Thank you very much, Madam Mayor, for hearing me. Is everyone able to hear me? Okay. So, thank you very much. And as a leader in the community and a priest, there's one thing I know, that when it comes to behaviors, when people become aware of something that's within their grasp, you increase the opportunity. You increase the instances in which someone is going to partake of or make use of, or do, or commit. There's one aspect of that that I'm concerned about with having a dispensary, especially if it's one that's within perhaps along the lines of where students would be driving by all the way to their classes or to their school and back and from their homes. Because it's one of those things that would become aware. I look out the window of my rectory and I see the parking lot, and often there are people who are there late at night, and the parking lot is used by staff, it's used by students coming to and from, sometimes even nightly games. And there have been encounters with students and individuals who have, perhaps there for their own entertainment, I don't know, but I'm concerned that this will become more and more a feature of our community here in Marine City. Again, it's about, as a police chief, Roland Welker, said, it's about the kids. I really think that this would tremendously impact our community. We have such a good place for parents to send their kids to school. We have a good place to raise families. We have a good community here in Marine City. And that will change. That will change. You might say, well, it's going to change anyway. But it's a bit different if someone has to drive further away to some other community and township than when they can find it really local. It does change what a person is going to do and the decisions that they're going to make, their awareness of something, the awareness of what's available to them. It's going to change perhaps even the way businesses are happening in our city as well. Imagine employees who are now having to take drug tests because they need to be performative on their job. How are companies going to have to test for that? Are they just going to have to say, well, you know, it won't matter? Will that impact whether the grass is cut? Will that impact whether people can have their restaurants open? But it will also impact people's attitudes towards how we live as a community here. Especially if an incident happens with a student or a kid or in a home. That's all going to be a consequence of a decision reached by the commission here in this ordinance. It's going to be a consequence. It's going to flow from the decisions and deliberations that come from what's happening in the city here. And I implore you to really consider what is best, what is good, what is charitable, what is right. That's all I have to say. Thank you so much.
Anybody else?
Madam Mayor, Commissioners, everyone here tonight. My name is Michael Page, and I've spoken here about a year ago, hoping that this nonsense would have faded away by now, but it hasn't. I've been married for 33 years, father of 3 children, 4 grandchildren, been an active member of the parish. My children have gone to school, Marine City schools, Cardinal Mooney, Holy Cross, and I'm the Grand Knight of the Knights of Columbus here in Marine City and Algonac. I'm not here representing the Knights of Columbus. I'm here representing the families and children of this community. Increased access to marijuana can lead to increased use and abuse of the drug by children, as well as other hard drugs. That's been spoken about tonight, and it's the truth. We all know that's the truth. It can affect mental health of children. People who use marijuana can become hooked on it and abuse it, leading to addiction, depression, anxiety, and even suicidal thoughts. Children who use marijuana will not perform to their full potential. It can impact driving safety. Marijuana can impair the driver's ability to focus and react, making the roads less safe for everyone. The infusion of THC into edible marijuana like gummy bears, brownies, lollipops, etc., makes it more difficult to detect when drivers or children are using marijuana. Marijuana is linked to school failure, lower income, and poorer quality of life. Marijuana has negative effects on attention, motivation, memory, and learning that can persist after the drug's immediate effects wear off, especially in people who use regularly. This information is all available on NIDA, National Institute of Health.gov. Okay? This isn't something I'm making up, but we all know it's true. We've all seen it. And the well-being of our children and families is in your hands. Please, make the right decisions here. Cut this nonsense off right now. And let's put this away for as long as we need to. As far as I know, it has always been unanimously turned down. And that's for good reason. Those people knew what this was going to do to our community and our children. So I beg of you to do the right thing here. Get rid of this garbage. We don't want it in this city. It's not good for the families and the children. We have to do what's best for our children. Please. Thank you very much. I know you'll do the right thing.
Thank you. Anybody else like to speak? Anybody else? Okay. Moving on to item 7 for approval of the minutes. Can I have a motion to approve the City Commission meeting minutes of February 1st, 2024?
So moved.
Support.
The motion and the support. Any other further discussion?
Regarding the minutes, I just wanted to bring to the public's attention that it was regarding the grant spending covering, or it was regarding the water project funding for about $175,000. The question was asked whether or not that would be covered by the grant, and it was confirmed specifically that it was. So I just wanted to let people know that that's been followed up on, and yes, it is covered by the grant. That's all. And thank you, Scott and Jason, for responding. Appreciate that.
Okay, if no further discussion, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. Now, item 8, the consent agenda. We have the Marine City Area Fire Authority Run Report, the departmental monthly activity reports, the Election Commission meeting minutes of December 14th, 2023, the Election Commission meeting minutes of January 15th, 2024, the 300 Broadway Committee meeting minutes of November 27th, 2023, and the Dangerous Building Board of Appeals meeting minutes, October 4th, 2023. I have a motion to approve the consent agenda, items A through F as presented.
So moved.
Support.
A motion and support. Is there any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Bryson?
Yes.
Commissioner Hendrick?
Yes.
Commissioner Clausen?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Brien?
Yes.
Commissioner Rourke?
Yes.
Commissioner Ross?
Yes.
Mayor Vandenbosch?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay. Item 9, items removed from the consent agenda. There are none. Under 10, financial business, we have 10A, expenditures, and including payroll of $608,943.68. Can I have a motion to approve those expenditures, including payroll, in that amount of $608,943.68?
Make a motion, we approve the expenditures, including payroll, for $608,943.68.
Support.
Okay, a motion and a support. Any further discussion? Double support. Okay, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Hendrick.
Yes.
Commissioner Clausen.
Yes.
Commissioner O'Brien.
Yes.
Commissioner Rourke.
Yes.
Commissioner Ross.
Yes.
Mayor Vandembosch.
Yes.
Commissioner Bryson.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Okay, now we have item 10B, the preliminary financial statements. And can I have a motion to receive and file the preliminary financial statements as presented?
So moved.
Support.
Okay, a motion and the support. Any further discussion? Hey, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that carries. Now to item 10C, the McBride and Manley audit presentation.
Well, while he's logging in, I can get started. Good evening, Mayor, City Commissioners. My name is Curtis McBride. I'm a CPA at McBride Manley and Company. With me this evening is Samantha Hudson. She's a CPA and she's one of my business partners at the firm. We are here to present the results of our audit of the City of Marine City for the period ending June 30, 2023. So before I get into the slides, I want to first talk about our audit opinion. There are three types of opinions you can receive from your auditor. The first type and the best type of opinion is what we call a clean or unmodified audit opinion, which means that we believe the financial statements are in compliance with our standards and they're fairly stated. They're accurate. And then the second type of opinion is what we call a qualified opinion, which means that for the most part, they're in compliance, but there may be a few exceptions to that. And then the third type of opinion is what we call an adverse opinion, which means we do not believe the financial statements are reliable and they're not in compliance with generally accepted accounting principles. I am pleased to announce that for the period ending June 30, 2023, the city did receive a clean opinion from our firm. I want to clarify a few things with respect to this opinion. Number one, you can receive a clean opinion from your auditor and still have what we call internal control findings, which are deficiencies in your accounting system. You did have some of those during the audit year, June 30, 2023. Secondly, we're not providing an opinion on the financial health of the city. That's not the focus of our audit. It's on the accuracy of the financial statements. And then thirdly, you can receive a clean opinion and have adjusting journal entries that must be made to your accounting records in order to render that opinion. So the most important thing is that you understand the journal entries, you accept them, and you make them do your accounting records in order to present the financial statements. And as long as you do that, you can still receive a clean or unmodified opinion under our professional standards. Now moving over to the slides. The first fund I want to talk about is the general fund. The general fund primarily derives its revenues from property taxes, state shared revenues, and federal, state, and local grants. So in looking at the balance sheet for the general fund, you can see it had about $3,769,000 of assets on hand at the end of the year. It had about $1,404,000 of liabilities against those assets, which left you with an ending fund balance level of about $2,365,000. To put that into perspective, that fund balance level is about 61% of your annual revenues in the fund. Now, I did mention this last year. The Michigan Department of Treasury performed a fund balance study back in 2019. They actually looked at all of the cities throughout the state of Michigan, and what they discovered was the median fund balance level as a percentage of total revenues for all cities was about 42%.
So you're currently at 61%, which means you're a little bit better than the median of all cities throughout the state. So that's a positive thing. You do have a healthy fund balance level in your general fund. In looking at the income statement for the general fund, here we're comparing 2023 to 2022. You can see total revenues went from about $3,141,000 in 2022 up to about $3,886,000 for 2023. So you can see you had an increase of revenues of about $745,000 from 22 to 23. And that's primarily because if you look, you generated about $735,000 in grant revenues during the 23 fiscal year. So some of the ARPA funds are in there, so you've earned some of the ARPA funds because you spent some of it. You also had the Marina grant in there, the Bridge to Bay grant, and the T-Mobile grant. So those were the major grants during the 23 fiscal year. And for the most part, that makes up the total difference between 22 and 23 in total revenues. In looking at expenditures, you can see those also increased. They went from about $3,168,000 in 22 up to about $3,529,000. So you had about a $361,000 increase in expenditures. So when you look, you can see public safety, public works, and recreation all had increases in expenditures during the year. That's because the city did acquire what we consider capital outlay during the year. I'll talk about that a little bit in my subsequent slide. But, you know, for instance, the police department acquired 2 police vehicles during 2023, which is why their total expenditures was up. And then recreation is the big one, and of course, that's the demo and the acquisition of 610 South Main Street was in the recreation department during 2023. So focusing only on 2023, you can see you generated $3.8 million of revenues. You spent about $3,529,000. So you actually had a net increase to your fund balance in general during the year of about $357,000. Looking at revenues specifically, again, I mentioned this in my previous slide, total revenues increased by about $745,000. That's mostly explained by the grants, but again, looking at some of the other differences, you can see property tax revenues. You generated about $1,741,000 in property taxes during 2022, and that went up to about $1,813,000 for 2023. And just to clarify, that's not because property tax rates have increased, because they have not. Tax rates have not increased. That's because property tax values, the taxable values of the properties have increased from 2022 to 2023, 22 to 23. And looking at the pie chart, that really drives the point home that your general fund really relies on property tax revenues. So about 40% of your annual revenues come from property taxes. In looking at expenditures by type, again comparing 22 to 23, as I mentioned, total expenditures did increase by about $361,000. And looking at the major expenditure types, you can see salaries costs did increase. They went from about $869,000 in 22 to just over $1,015,000 for 2023. But if you notice, about halfway down, professional and contractual costs went down. They went from $462,000 to $389,000. And that's because salaries and contractual fees are related. So some fees that you were paying for contracted services back in 2022 became employees and became employment-related costs in 2023. So those two expenditure types are directly related. And again, I kind of alluded to this in a previous slide. The major difference between the 2 years is capital outlay. You can see you spent about $256,000 excuse me, in capital outlay during 2022 and about $532,000 in capital outlay for 23. So the major capital outlay items, I mentioned the police department acquired 2 police vehicles at the end of the 23 fiscal year. You also had the DPW bought a boom lift during the 23 year. You also had expenditures for the kayak launch, and then the major capital outlay was the acquisition of 610 South Main Street. So those are the major capital outlay expenditures you had during 2023. And looking at the pie chart, you can see that payroll and payroll-related costs made up about 45% of your budget in general during the year. And that's typical of a city that offers full services, that has a police department and a DPW. Obviously, those are very labor-intensive departments, so you would expect labor costs to make up a significant portion of your general budget. I have a couple slides here where we get into some trend analysis. So this is the property tax revenue trend going back to 2014. You can see you generated about $1,506,000 in property taxes in 2014. That went up over $1.6 million for 2019. And as I mentioned previously, you can see that for 2023, you generated about $1,813,000 of property taxes during the year. And again, as I mentioned, it's not because property tax rates have increased, it's because property values, property taxable values, have increased from 14 to 23. Now, even though you see an upward trend here in property taxes, the thing that's interesting about this is that if we took this back to 2009, you actually generated about $2,021,000 of property taxes back in 2009. So you actually generated about $208,000 less in property taxes during 23 than you did back in 2009. And that's if you remember, back in 2010 and 2011, property values declined very sharply in a very short period of time. So taxable values followed suit, which means property taxes were less. What ends up happening is, because of the limitations placed on property taxes in Michigan, so you have Proposal A, which puts a cap on the increase in property tax growth in a given year to individual properties, and you have the same cap that's placed on the city as a whole under the Headley Amendment. So there is no cap on the decrease in property taxes, only a cap on the increase. So when you have a very sharp decline in 1 or 2 years, it's going to take a long time to climb out of that hole that you've experienced. So as I mentioned, even though you see an upward trend here from 14 to 23, you still generated about $208,000 less in property taxes in 23 than you did back in 2009 because of those limitations. Next is the 10-year historical fund balance trend. Again, going back to 2014, you can see you finished that year with about $830,000 in ending fund balance. That went up over $2 million at the end of 2019, and as I mentioned, you finished 2023 with an ending fund balance level of about $2,365,000. So you can see an upward trend here in your fund balance level from 2014 to 2023. So even though you're generating $208,000 less in property taxes now than you did back in 2009, which is your major revenue source in general fund, you've actually been able to maintain and actually increase your fund balance level over that same time period. I want to talk about the street funds briefly. Now, this is the major and local street funds. These two funds primarily derive their revenues from distributions from the state of Michigan from MDOT, from the Michigan Department of Transportation. These two funds are governed by Michigan Public Act 51 of 1951. These are what we call special revenue funds. We call them special revenue funds because their fund balance levels are restricted for a special purpose, and that's for the maintenance and construction of streets throughout the city. In other words, you can't use the fund balances in these two funds to fund general operations over in the general fund. You can't do that. It has to stay within these funds for streets. And looking at the balance sheet for local street, you can see you had about $692,000 of assets on hand at the end of the year. You had liabilities against those assets of about $59,000, which left you with an ending fund balance level of about $633,000. In major streets, you had about $1,180,000 in total assets, about $224,000 of liabilities against those assets, which left you with an ending net fund balance level of about $956,000. And looking at the income statement for these two funds, you can see local streets generated about $348,000. It spent about $317,000. So local streets had a net increase to its fund balance level of about $31,000 during '23. Major streets generated about $395,000 of revenues. It spent about $268,000, so it had a net increase to its fund balance level of about $127,000. While we're on this slide, I want to point out a couple things. Number one, you can see local streets had transfers from other funds as income, and then major streets had transfers to other funds as expenditures. So under Michigan Public Act 51, your major street fund is allowed to transfer up to 50% of its MDOT distributions over to local streets to help supplement that fund. So you are allowed to transfer some major street funds over to local streets, and you did do that during 2023. The last two funds, or the last fund I want to talk about briefly is the Water and Sewer Fund. This fund is quite a bit different than the general fund and the street funds in that this is what we call an enterprise or proprietary fund. And we call it that because it's actually accounted for like a for-profit private business. And that's because the city owns the water and sewer plants and all the major infrastructure associated with the plants. It then charges the users, the residents, for use of the systems. This fund is supposed to be a self-sustaining fund. So in looking at the assets, you can see you had about $7.38 million of assets in water and sewer. But if you notice, there's an asset category called capital assets of about $4.7 million. So the capital assets would be the water and sewer plants themselves and all the major assets associated with the plants. These are not liquid assets. So even though you have about $7.3 million of assets, the majority of it, roughly $4.7 million, is tied up in those non-liquid assets. Looking at liabilities, you had about $2.6 million of liabilities against the assets, which left you with an ending net position of about $4.8 million. Looking at the liabilities, you did have some long-term debt of $510,000, so that's comprised of two things. You have your DWRF bond, which matures in 2026, and then you also have a lease on a vacuum truck, which actually matures this year in 2024, so that'll be coming off the books here shortly. And you can see the water and sewer, also you see the water and sewer's portion of the pension liability of $693,000 and the OPEB liability of $939,000. So OPEB is retirees' health care. That's its portion of the retirees' health care. Again, it had an ending net position of about 4.8, but the majority, if not all of that net position, is tied up in those non-liquid assets, the capital assets. That's it for the income statement. You can see the water and sewer generated about $2,005,000. It spent about $1,534,000, so you had a net increase to your net position during the year of about $471,000. That's it for the funds. I just want to really briefly talk about our audit process. So our audit is performed in all the major accounting functions, and I listed some of them here. So we're looking at purchasing, cash receipts, utility billing, payroll is a big one. A good example would be in purchasing, we're actually looking at samples of invoices for purchases. So number one, we're making sure that that purchase has been approved, that the invoice has been approved, not only by management, but eventually that invoice, that purchase gets to council, gets to you, and it gets on the schedule of bills to be approved. Obviously, we're making sure that the purchase is appropriate for a city in the state of Michigan, a proper expenditure. And then, of course, we're making sure that purchase gets recorded in your accounting records. That's obviously a major part here. We're doing the same thing with cash receipts and utility billing. So utility billing, we're actually looking at samples of water and sewer billings, making sure that residents are being billed for actual usage at rates which have been approved by council. And we're also looking at payroll records. And of course, we perform our year-end reconciliations in order to put together that full financial statement, that bound document that you should all have. I want to briefly talk about our internal control findings, which I kind of briefly mentioned when I discussed our audit opinion. Close this for a moment. And certainly, 2023 was a challenge, frankly. Not too much different than 2022, I would say. We did have some internal control findings. I want to really focus on two, which I believe are significant and warrant mention here at the meeting. I mentioned this at last year's presentation. The biggest one is bank reconciliations not being performed timely. Again, you know, even people who are not accountants understand that if the main bank account is not reconciled in a timely fashion, you can't be sure that any of the other financial information you're reviewing on a monthly basis as a city council is even accurate. You know, you don't know if the cash balance on your balance sheet is accurate. You don't know if the property tax revenues are accurate, and so forth and so on. So that is what I would call a significant finding. The other one is what I call a property tax reconciliation. So you have to remember that the city has a tax fund, and it has its own bank account for property taxes. And the reason for that is the city collects property taxes not only for itself, but you're also collecting property taxes for the district and the county. So the whole purpose of that fund is that it collects property taxes. It then has to remit or distribute those property taxes where they belong. So without doing a consistent reconciliation, you can't be sure that you've dispersed all of those funds where they belong. So that's another, what I would consider a substantial finding. One other thing I mentioned a year ago is a really good indication of how the accounting records are is how many audit journal entries did you have during the year? And there were, I believe, 68 audit journal entries for the general fund during the 2023 year. And to put that into perspective, there were about, I believe there were 49 for 2022. So there were actually more. I also want to point out a couple of things. Katie Posey, Treasurer Posey, I think deserves a lot of credit. She came in, I believe, the middle of June. So Katie was not here for any of the year that we were auditing. So that, you know, that's also important for everyone to understand. And she worked, I would say, relentlessly to make sure we had the information we needed in order to complete and submit the audit in a timely fashion. We met with Katie early on when she started. You know, I think Katie, you understood the challenges that we were all facing, but we put together a game plan and a timeline of how to attack this. And we knew right away that we had to start auditing the pension and retirees healthcare funds because the information had to be submitted to the actuary for pension and retirees health in a timely fashion because that held up last year's audit. So the good news is it was submitted. We received the actuarial reports, I want to say around Thanksgiving, which is still not perfect, but it gives us time to be able to complete the rest of our audit procedures with that information. And I am optimistic that for 2024, there will probably be even sooner than that. Ideally, we probably want that by Halloween would probably be a perfect scenario, which I think that's a reasonable goal for 2024. And again, I can't say enough about how hard Katie worked to get us the information. And, you know, what everyone needs to keep in mind is the period that we audited was July 1st, 2022 to June 30, 2023, right? So these internal control findings that we had, that may not be and likely is not an indicator of how things are currently operating from an accounting standpoint with the city. And based on my conversations with Katie over the last few months, as well as Mary Ellen McDonald, who is helping Katie, helping her get caught up, also providing some training, I think we're optimistic for the 2023-2024 year. I think we're off to a good start, and I'm hoping that it'll be a much better year than 23 and 24 as far as the audit is concerned. Again, that's all I have. Any questions?
Go ahead.
I guess I also want to thank Katie. I know you walked into just a bee's nest here. Are we getting a lot closer in the old reconciliations?
Mary Ellen's helping catch
Yeah.
us up because we had to do
Yes,
And we were doing those still in like November
yes.
of this year. So we have the retiree healthcare and pension funds are caught up. You know, the Brownfield account, all the guys there. So we're like 3 accounts away from being caught up month to date.
Wonderful, and I'm sure that's been an awful lot of work. Yes,
Hopefully we're gonna, I don't know if she's gonna gauge where we're meeting the middle where I can take this over.
yes, and that's the thing to point out. I mean, the volume of work that her and Mary Ellen are doing is phenomenal. I would ask people to read this and put that in mind. All the corrections are being made because you're here to help us get past this. I mean, there's a lot of things that need to still be corrected, and I can see that you've written a corrective action report, or the two of you have written that. That's in here. So that gives me a better feeling of what's going on, because I'm telling you, I know how bad things were for you coming in the door, and you trying to do the audit, which means once this gets cleaned up, that's another thing for the taxpayers. Once this gets cleaned up and she gets this all around, it cuts down on our audit costs.
Yes.
Yes,
You
it
know,
does.
Our audit costs were very, very high the last couple of years. And that's nothing against, that's your job. But it was because of the mess that our budget, you know, and it's not this administration, it's prior. So I just want to say thank you to everybody that's worked so hard to get this cleaned up. And I know you got a long ways to go yet, but I really appreciate, and I can totally understand, read through this, all the hard work that you guys are putting into this, and the help from you to help her on all the things that have to be done.
So I also understand it could have been even more expensive, so we thank you very much for
Thank you.
for that gift to the city. The other thing I was going to ask about is, and you and I had discussed this, Curtis, but we are now pre-approved for our bond, right? So whereas previously, because of a late submission, I believe, of the actuarials, we were put on a list sort of non-pre-approval, but we are now back to that status, which is
Correct.
wonderful, too.
For
Thanks.
municipal financing, you are now in what they call qualified status for at least 2024. You were not for 2023. That's correct.
So, great news.
Um,
Thanks again.
One more thing, how do you think, as far as our pension funding,
Sure.
are we, I saw this one page you got in here.
Sure.
How do you think we're doing on that?
Yeah, so the thing that's always interesting about pension and retirees' health is the idea, for pension at least, is you are required under the state rules to pre-fund your pension, right? So when you look at the financial statements, as you mentioned, Lisa, the pension liability is currently at $2.6 million. So that's not necessarily, right now, what that means is at some point to pay out in the future, it's $2.6 million. So the city has an actuary who calculates what you must contribute to that pension every single year. So that calculation is not only the current cost, but they also anticipate what the future costs are for pre-funding the plan. And so they calculate that and they provide you with what they call the annual required contribution. And you are required to make that contribution, and the city always makes that contribution without fail. So you're doing a good job with that. Now, your funding status, that's how they kind of gauge, whether you're underfunded or properly funded. They look at what percentage are you funded. So your pension was about 69 to 70% funded at the end of June 30, 2023. Now, under the state guidelines, you are considered underfunded if it's less than 60%. So you're not considered underfunded for your pension plan. And again, the most important thing is you continue to make the annual required contribution as determined by your actuary. Same thing with retirees' health is a little unique because believe it or not, you are not required to fund your retirees' health on an actuarial basis like you are pension. Under state rules, you're not required to. But your total OPEB, or retirees' health liability, is also, it's about $2.3 million, and it's only 12% funded. But believe it or not, under the state's definition of underfunding, it's not considered underfunded because your annual required contribution is only 5% of how much you generate in revenues in your general fund. So if that number is less than 12%, you're not considered underfunded. So neither one of your pension's not considered underfunded, and neither is your retirees' health care.
Will we be getting the actuarials?
Yes. We'll share, again, any details that we get, and that'll be shared with the Pension Retirement Board always. too.
Okay, yeah, usually we approve them first, but I just wondered, because I've had a few of them ask me, so I want to make sure we keep it all up. That's the questions. Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Brief question, if I may. Throughout the report, there's various comments towards trainings, knowledge, and proper amount of staffing. And it sounds like this year that's moving in the proper direction. I just want to kind of put a button on it, both with Katie and with you, that after we get to a point of being done with an auditor, do we have all of our trainings in place, or is there more resources we need to be collecting for that end?
That's actually a fair question. So to answer your question, I guess I'll start with the first one. I would agree that it appears, certainly, Katie is gaining experience, and I think what's valuable to her is Mary Ellen McDonald's experience. Frankly, she's probably the most experienced municipal treasurer I've ever met. She was the city's treasurer for decades. And to put it into perspective, when we came in to audit, when she was here, your general fund maybe required 2 adjusting journal entries. And so for Katie to have that resource to help her, I think she's in really good hands, and she's on her way, in addition to her own, obviously, work ethic and her own personal abilities and skill. I think it's moving in a positive direction. Now, to the second part of it, I think it's a fair question that, obviously, long-term, Mary Ellen can't be here forever. So what does that mean? Potentially, you may need to dedicate, frankly, more resources to assist Katie, I think, is the other side of this.
Mayor, if I can, so if I can tag on to this, a couple of statements that I think that are important, not just for the commission, some of you are aware of this, but certainly for the residents. We had a 2-year period of time where we went through 3 treasurer and finance directors. No consistency there. You are all aware of where we had been. We are not there. We're in a very good position with a very well-qualified treasurer and finance director. We are, again, as Mr. McBride said, very fortunate to have had Mary Ellen and her legacy of knowledge, as they call it, to be able to be here and help us. We actually only had 1 staff member in this city office that had any tenure with this city of almost 10 years. Everybody else was new within the course of about the last year. Now, that isn't all bad, because new doesn't mean inexperienced. And again, with Katie and her experience and others and Jason and staff itself, we're in a much better position than we have been in a long time. And training is forever and continual. So I want you all to know, and again, I can't say enough thank you of Katie. I still hear her screams at times, I think, I'm not sure. But she came back every day. But she is involved and an active member of the Michigan Municipal Treasurers Association. She attended one of their first conferences last year. She'll be going back this year. That is an annual event for training and continuing education and certifications. And it is a testament to her dedication to do that, as well as utilizing resources within the county and throughout the state, webinars, the county association here. So the eagerness is there, and she's putting a practical application. We're taking the financial administrative assistant, who again is also new here, but has obviously financial background, and improving training, and all of the staff is working on training. And we're looking at, as I mentioned before, there's going to be some changes that will be very noticeable in the budget as we go through, and we're all in. And Curtis and your staff, I mean, the phone calls come in, they always answer the calls, they get back with us. We want to call them less because, we know it's a lot of work, but we value the training that's being provided, from you and your staff as well. So, and I always tell everybody too, keep in mind, we are in a good, sound financial position. We are improving, and you've seen the corrective action plan. The minor deficiencies, when I say minor deficiencies, I don't want to downplay them, they're very significant, but minor in the sense of it is not going to be a difficult obstacle for us to overcome, and some of those we've already achieved. Just getting better and better and better, and we keep working on these things, and there has been really no risk, even though some of the items that have been identified here are, again, important items. We haven't been at the risk of fraud and mismanagement of internal fund controls, actually cash coming in and out. Those are great things, because I have seen and heard of, and you all have as well, communities that have had a complete implosion, and one of those deficiencies could lead to the bigger items, and we haven't had that, because we've fortunately been able to kind of right-side the ship and start sailing forward together. So I'm very confident that it is only going to get better and better and better. And again, training is forever, but keep in mind, in the budget you're going to see an enhanced line for training in so many departments. And we have talked, there may be a need at some point for additional part-time staffing to help with, especially as we're going into this significant safe drinking water program, to maybe offset on some utility billing functions or other type of functions as we set up those loans and grants and things. We're only going to ask for it if we feel it's necessary and needed, and we may get there. But if we don't need it, that's also a good thing as well. So, again, Katie, I've heard the screams, I've closed the door, I've turned up the music, you come back, and it's great. So I think we're in a very good position, and you should feel very confident with the capabilities of, not just Katie, but the staff as well.
And you've been working on procedural issues, coming out with better
Yes.
procedures for the department.
Procedures that either hadn't been updated in quite some time or weren't existing at all. And I think you all know you're going to see a couple of significant policy and procedure adjustments coming up this year, dealing with purchasing and contracts and those type of things that, again, we're doing what we need to do. There isn't a major red flag popped up there, but we want to make it clearer for the expectations and understanding of every employee, and very tighten that we reduce risk, and that's what it's about. So,
Thank you.
And I'd like to say thank you again to Katie. Thank you to Mary Ellen McDonald.
Oh, yes, Mary.
Scott, all the staff. You guys are doing an excellent job. Excellent job. Thank you, Curtis and Sam. And so, full transparency, they also audit me as well, one of my other jobs. So I know how thorough they are, but I know what a great job you do. And also thank you, because I know you could charge us more for all the auditing assistance that you provide us, and you don't. So appreciate that very much, too.
Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anything else? Okay.
All right. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. On to item 10D, for the fiscal year end June 30, 2023, the annual audit. I have a motion to receive and file the fiscal year end June 30, 2023 annual audit results as presented.
I make a motion that we accept, receive, and file the fiscal year end June 30th, 2023 annual audit results from McBride Manley.
Support.
Motion and the support. Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? That carries. On to item 11A for the unfinished business, Police Department body camera waiver. Chief Hessel.
I need one of these, I might take it.
for a small fee,
I know, right?
might be available.
Good evening, Madam Mayor, City Commissioners. Several months ago, I was before you asking for approval to update what I believed at the time was our body camera project and our in-car cameras. You graciously approved that project. The following morning, I reached out to the Axon rep, placed the order, and he said, once you get your parts, call me and we'll work on install. Kind of had a little uh-oh moment. because the installation was supposed to be included in what I believed was the in-car camera purchase. So I had asked him about the in-car cameras, and he said that it was an oversight on his part, and he never put it into the quote that I presented before you that night. So I had him go back, re-quote me for 3 new in-car cameras and all the body cameras, and it was going to be an additional $30,000 to $35,000 on top of the $33,000 that you guys approved for me that night. And I could not stomach that number, so I was back to the drawing board. So I reached out to GTAC, who is our current provider, and asked them what they had and could provide. We are 3 models outdated currently from what they presented. What we currently have, that's very deficient. The quote he presented is for a 5-year cloud storage, and they're kind of mirroring what Axon does a little bit, that at 2.5 years, they will come in and refurbish everything we have at no additional cost. So it's an extended warranty program on that quote. So I'm asking, sort of the $24,445 for the quote. I still have the $14,250 from the donation from County Commissioner Vandenbosch. So I am asking for $10,195 to complete this project. I'm asking for a waiver of the competitive bid, and if so, approved, then I'm asking for approval to purchase all new cameras for my officer.
Do you have that built into your budget?
I do not. But we just saw a great audit, though, on how much money we have.
Good answer, Jim.
Are these cameras comparable in performance to the Axon?
So I asked him if I could do a T&E, which is a trial and research, use it to see what he only had one, and there was a waiting list significantly long before I could even get this thing to do the T&E on. So because of my current state of what my body cameras are in, I kind of need just to pull the trigger on this and move forward with this. So.
But it sounds like a lot of other communities, I mean, a lot of other departments, are they using the same?
It's all over the place. I mean, you've got WatchGuard out there, you've got Provision out there, you've got Axon, and GTAC are pretty much the 4 big ones. Okay. I don't want to move. If I was moving to Axon, then I would have to upgrade the in-cars as well. I didn't realize that was going to be an additional $30,000 to $35,000. So if we just stick with GTAC, I can keep my current in-car cameras that I have. I have no issues with those. This $24,000 is just specifically for all new body cams.
City Manager?
Yes, I just want to state to the commission, when the chief was looking at the Axon cameras, we were going to have to do a budget amendment at that point as well, because it wasn't an original item in there. So it's not uncommon that we will need to do a budget amendment. However, I also believe, and Katie and I will continue to work on this more, that there will be some single line items within the police budget that are going to come in under the original budget. So ultimately, it could be very minimal at the total amount, or even a wash, depending on the other adjustments that will play out through the course of the year. And again, because the police department is actually, as a whole, everything is under general fund, there are likely going to be adjustments in other areas that will not have been expended. So I think that this is a reasonable adjustment that we will have to make, and we will do it according to audit principles in advance. But I think as far as the dollar amounts, we should not anticipate any issue of being able to have that $10,000 and change moving from an adjustment at another location in the budget.
Moving forward, to add to that, currently right now we pay a yearly fee for GTAC. Axon was going to be about $6,000 or $7,000 a year. This is, once we pay this, I'll be able to get this right out of my budget for the next 5 years. We won't have to pay another, no cloud storage, no payments, no nothing.
So we're waiving the competitive bidding because we're extending a relationship with our current provider, piggybacking off of our current equipment.
Exactly.
I heard you say that.
I thought it anyway.
All right, so you need that to start?
Yeah.
We would need an independent motion to waive competitive bidding.
I'll make a motion to waive competitive bidding for the GTAC body cameras.
Support.
Okay. And motion and support. Any further discussion?
Just a brief question. We had approved a certain amount for the Axon cameras. Do we have that number?
That was, it was about 33,000
I
or
was,
so.
it was in excess of $30,000.
Yeah.
This is
We're well under
significantly,
what
Right.
we had yeah.
correct.
Correct. Just double checking.
But that's a good point for the public to understand.
Yeah. Very good point. Okay, if no further discussion, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Clausen.
Yes.
Commissioner O'Brien.
Yes.
Commissioner Rourke.
Yes.
Commissioner Ross.
Yes.
Mayor Vandembosch.
Yes.
Commissioner Bryson.
Yes.
Commissioner Hendrick.
Yes.
Motion carried.
I'll make a motion that we approve the $10,195 to complete the purchase of the GTAC body cameras.
Support.
Okay, any further discussion? Okay, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner O'Brien.
Yes.
Commissioner Rourke.
Yes.
Commissioner Ross.
Yes.
Mayor Vandembosch.
Yes.
Commissioner Bryson.
Yes.
Commissioner Hendrick.
Yes.
Commissioner Clausen.
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good job, Chief.
Okay.
Let us know how they do.
On to item 11B. It is the ordinance 24-001, adult use marijuana ordinance and application review discussion. And do you want to start us out?
Sure. Commissioners, you're aware there have been multiple versions and changes of the ordinance. The ordinance had been passed through for an introduction and first reading several months ago, and then working through the process with questions as they came up as far as review, primarily mapping, locations, restrictions. There have been numerous changes as a result. Mr. Davis has put together the latest information as received by the commission that has adjusted language for mapping. The revised maps have been included, and what you have in front of you is a reading or consideration to review this. Again, the possibility could be the second reading. I would not expect that tonight, but at some point in the future, or whatever direction the commission should choose. But this reflects all of the most recent changes dealing with the property setback requirements that have been presented at various meetings.
Yeah, I think you guys have been looking at the same ordinance for quite some time. The only provision of the ordinance that has been reviewed and subject to change is your buffers. And we've been working on the buffers primarily, not the balance of the language of the ordinance. I think Commissioner Ross raised a good issue that is worthy of further analysis, and I'll have him maybe explain that, or not.
No.
Yeah, but I also wanted to say this to the public, you know, you really can't enact an ordinance that allows for something but then buffers against it. So, you know, one of the struggles that you have had as a commission is coming up with buffers that allow some property in an area where you believe it's the most appropriate, if there is an appropriate area, the area you think is appropriate for the use. But, you know, you have to be careful not to have a, well, hey, we're going to allow the use, but when you apply the buffer, there's no place to put it. It's an ineffective ordinance that wouldn't make sense, right? So, Brian, I think that you certainly caught my attention with your discussion, so I would, and it's on buffers.
Yeah.
So maybe go ahead with
So
that.
what I wanted to do was the ballot language that was finalized by the state of Michigan for recreational use marijuana suggested that 1,000-foot buffers be used for K through 12 schools and what was it?
Church.
There was a, no, I didn't think it was churches specifically in that
Oh, the
language. It
mental
was
Mental health.
Mental health.
mental health facilities, yeah.
Rehabilitation.
And from areas zoned specifically residential. So I thought if it was areas zoned specifically residential and from schools, we actually have the 1,000 feet, I thought. I'm not entirely sure, but I would be interested in seeing, only K through 12 schools and only resident areas zoned specifically residential to at least show that we could adhere to that recommended language. Then show that further to that, we would also be prescribing additional setbacks to additional structures, churches, things like this. So that was my only request, because it was brought up that the ordinance language did not meet that.
So are you saying we should have a two-tiered kind of thing for commercial and then schools? Where one is 500, one is 1,000? Is that, am I getting that from your
Let me read
statement?
exactly what the language was.
Well, I think what Brian is trying to accomplish can be stated like this, is that the state law has some buffers that it would like. You don't have to follow them, but
That's true.
But they are in the state law. Brian is saying, well, why can't we try to meet those so we're complying with the state law? And then add other buffers that we think are appropriate, because you're allowed to add your own buffer.
Correct.
So
Precisely what I'm trying to say.
and I think that's what, and so where we're at is we haven't really mapped that entirely yet. And that's why I think the manager suggested you may not be doing your second reading this evening, because we'd like to see what that looks like. And we haven't really, I can tell you this, it does leave room. It does leave development room. But I think you need to see that more clearly.
Yes.
Okay.
Go ahead.
So I also want to point out that included in the draft, and I think right from the beginning of the first reading, we not only included the distances from the nearest boundary of any designated residential zone, well, actually not the first, but adjusted shortly thereafter, residential zone district, we also included an additional requirement, 500 feet from the nearest lot line of any residential home structure. Because there was a difference. We knew that we had within certain areas of the city what's known as non-conforming zoning. So we had homes located in an industrial or commercial zone that were actually being used as residential. So that was added, and the consideration of the adjacent township areas that had, in their part, agricultural zoning, but there were residential homes on those properties. So that was also put into the ordinance as an additional buffer. And in looking at some of the potential revisions, again, if there was an additional portion put in to move that 500 feet for churches and mental health facilities and increase that to 1,000, it does diminish what we had on the last version of maps,
right,
but still leaves portions where development could occur and building could occur. That, again, still is based upon meeting zoning requirements, setbacks, driveways, but there still are properties that are left on what was referred to, I believe, as the map subsection, I don't recall if it was A or B, but the South Parker portion, again, there are 3 parcels there. Those were unchanged by any potential modifications of churches or mental health facilities. However, along King Road, there were some parcels that would then come out, or the limitations would be expanded that would be pushed back to a smaller portion of a parent parcel. And then, again, why I mentioned that we might not be in a position for a second reading is, although I've kind of hand-drawn those pieces, and in talking with Mr. Davis, we would want to have a verification on those maps if that's the direction of the commission, and that is done through county GIS to put those extra perimeters in, which would be a toggle, because I believe originally we were 1,000, 750, a number of different things at play, so we would want to have that physically on the maps to look at.
So just to reiterate, the direct language from the state law, referendum, whatever it was the property where the proposed marijuana establishment is to be located is not within an area zoned exclusively for residential. So actually, it's not even that it's 1,000 feet from a residential area, but just that it's not within it.
Right.
And is not within 1,000 feet of a pre-existing public or private school providing education in kindergarten or any grades 1 through 12, unless a municipality adopts an ordinance that reduces that distance requirement. You know, I believe that our zone meets that. And I guess why wouldn't we want to show that we are not reducing anything really from what this recommends, but rather only enhancing it. And then we added all the things that, from any residential zoning district, from any residential home structure to the lot line, from any church structure, from any licensed alcohol or drug rehabilitation center, you know, all these are actually additions. And then I guess if I might add, you know, if this is something that the community still feels they do not want, I mean, it seems to be relatively split, but again, the idea here was to introduce something, an ordinance which allows only a specific and strict location for these things, is that ballot language could come in and mandate that we put 10 of these things in town, or something along these lines. So the idea here was that we at least well thought out an area that would be out of the way and at least thought about location prior to doing this.
Yeah.
But
I would recommend that the commission be entitled to view the final mapping.
Oh, for sure, yeah.
And, you know, again, as I've said, we're under no pressure. We have a no in place. So we're under no pressure to, we're not in a race to get an ordinance in place. And you should take time and make sure you understand the mapping.
But can you also explain one more time to everybody the difference if we don't have an ordinance and a referendum goes in?
Well,
and then you try to create an ordinance.
The state law does allow for a citizen-initiated ballot proposal to force a community to get into the business and have an ordinance, and they can originally propose the type of ordinance they see fit from the industry side, and then you're in a position where you're trying to fight off with your own ordinance, and it can just become as you've seen in other communities, an expensive, drawn-out process. Getting, as Brian just articulated well, your ordinance proposed and in place in a manner where you're dictating the best suitable properties in your minds where this use would go is a far better approach. I think we had some meetings where people said, you know, you would be seeing soon a ballot initiative. On the other hand, as articulated by some of the folks very well in the audience, it's been many years and we haven't seen that. You have put together an ordinance that accomplishes that objective, but you do need to see a final mapping.
Okay, I'd agree with that as well.
We already have an ordinance in effect that we voted, and there's no period. We voted a long time ago not to allow them, right?
Yes, sir.
And then we're trying to do an ordinance to, so we can't get sued. But if we do an ordinance and somebody doesn't like it, they can still sue us. So where do we stand? I mean, like I say, well, you know I'm against it, so. But,
yeah, I understand what you're saying.
But I'm just saying that you're saying, well, if they come in and want to sue us, if we got an ordinance, they can also sue us.
Yeah, you're never going to be free, but having an ordinance in place that allows the use certainly makes a ballot initiative to allow the use far less potent.
Because
far
we're
less,
restricting.
Because you're already restricting. And bear in mind, you're going down the road of not allowing, you know, grow operations. You're not allowing some of the operations under this ordinance that, you know, carry with them certain environmental concerns and odor concerns. And this ordinance is strictly related to dispensaries, sales uses, so.
Bill, I think the opt-out where we currently stand, the city voted
Right.
unanimously to opt out.
And that was
I
the
don't,
vote.
that is correct. That is the law of the land today. That isn't necessarily protecting us or not protecting us from lawsuits. It's that a ballot initiative could come in which says we, the people, want a facility of some sort or nature in town. That could be from a grow operation to this to that. And if that ballot measure passes, we're forced, our hands are tied, and we're forced to do something to allow that in town. And what this would propose anyway is we will, and it's not inviting it per se, it's just saying if such an establishment was to come here, it could be located here and here and, so far.
Yeah.
And these.
But if they don't
but
like
it's-
our mapping, they can still sue us.
Well, potentially, I think that people can sue, but.
Yeah.
But I think if you have an ordinance in place, it's difficult to sue a community to have an ordinance that allows for a use because you want the use. You'd be ahead of the game, certainly. Now, you recall it right, though. Remember when medical came out, we were all here. Medical, if you didn't do anything, that meant you opted out. When recreational came, they flipped it and they said you have to affirmatively opt out in order to opt out. And so I brought you a short ordinance that opted you out, and you passed that ordinance. It's in place today. You are an opt-out community.
I have it hard because I work in other communities, and I have another community that has 3 of them, and they wish they never even looked at it, period.
And one of them's closing, right?
Yep.
Yeah, I have a community where
police
we had
department
3 and
for
1 is
everything.
closing as well.
It's just a-
But isn't it Chesterfield's the one that they did the referendum and now they're
Yeah.
in trouble because?
They were put in a pickle.
And my understanding is Algonac just had one that was just submitted for a signature check. They made, at least on the petitions, they made the number, and
Right.
it's getting validated right now, is my understanding.
Yep.
And the concern with the Chesterfield one, Lisa, was that the ballot initiative actually said an unlimited amount.
Yes.
Right.
And it passed.
And it passed.
Right.
Yes.
So then that went to the township, hey, here's a passed initiative that says an unlimited number, what do you want to do? And I think they've tried to work out a balanced ordinance, but you're starting from a bad bargaining position.
Right.
Yes.
The people said unlimited. Where's
Right.
our unlimited?
Right.
amount?
It was a clever language.
That's-
And some of the information on that too, because then their commission or their committee that was looking for the locations were initially said, okay, well then they can all go into this industrial area. And then the people then were coming back to say, no, you can't limit us, pocket us into this space.
Unlimited.
It's unlimited, and
Right.
so it got.
They could go anywhere.
Yeah.
You know, that's the dilemma that we're in, if we allow it.
I know the Chesterfield lawyer aged a little bit during that process.
Now,
So would we be looking for a motion to table this until we get maps for 1,000 feet?
Yeah, to
From-
the very next meeting.
no.
I have another question.
Oh, yeah. Oh, go ahead.
On page 5 or 208 of the application, it says, including all available parking spaces and specifying which parking spaces, if any, are handicap accessible. Aren't we required to have some handicap spots for each building?
They would have to meet, she's asking about a requirement for site planning. Yeah, this paragraph makes them comply, but the word if any is in there, the law may not.
Is that leaving us open to saying, no,
No,
you
no,
don't
I
have
think,
to?
I think you're.
It's
you're-
okay?
Yeah, you're well covered there.
All right, I just wanted to make sure.
Bear in mind, folks, that we've put together an application process, and the ordinance scheme here requires that any applicant for one of these facilities has to go through a fairly robust site plan approval process as part of their application process. And, you're doing one thing to narrow where these potential facilities can exist, but your site plan, if you read through the application process and you read the ordinance of what's required in site planning, it's fairly robust. We have provisions about lighting, hours, noise, waste, security, all has to go through our site plan process.
So if I may ask one more time for the public's sake, we've done 1,000-foot maps and didn't find a site. So can we explain again the difference between the 1,000-foot maps we're going to
Yes.
get this time?
Because we did 1,000 distance from other things.
Right.
And now Brian took a look at it in one of his wisdom moments and said, well, wait a minute, what if we just did the 1,000 as it's laid out in the state law? And doing just that and not the other things makes a big difference.
So we're looking at generally the same areas still.
I'm not saying that we don't do the other things.
No, I'm saying
still want these
on 1,000 feet,
too.
on 1,000 feet.
I'm just saying that we highlight that we meet the state law.
Right.
There are nothing may be permitted in an area zoned strictly residential.
Or 1,000
We
feet
meet
from a
that.
school.
And we meet the other thing that was it must be
Right.
1,000 feet from a K through 12 school.
And then we keep our other buffers.
Correct.
Making us more restrictive than state law.
Correct.
Right.
But the previous 1,000-foot maps covered a much broader
Yes,
area.
because we were applying them to everything.
Correct. We weren't just applying them to the
Right. You are correct.
K through 12 schools.
City manager.
In the period of time that we've been discussing this, over the period of a couple of years, there's been some elections that have gone on with units, right, north of us and stuff, and they all were ballots, and they all lost on the ballots. So the majority of people don't want it.
Yes, they have, some of those ballots did fail. You're correct.
I would think it'd be depending on the wording and the people, but I mean, even here, when the marijuana initiative went through here, it passed. So you take that chance.
Well, you have to remember though, I've given this comment in other meetings, other settings, and I think it gets pointed out, the fact that marijuana is legalized as a use in the state as a whole was not the same as saying it belongs in your city. So everybody likes to say, well, the majority of the people in Marine City voted to legalize marijuana. Well, that could be true, but it wasn't before them and have dispensaries in your city.
Right.
So I think like some of the comments made are, yeah, I don't have a problem against the legalization of marijuana, but I certainly wasn't voting to have it in my city.
Yeah. But you still take a risk
You do. You do.
that it could pass.
City manager.
So my question is more of a procedural question, actually, to Mr. Davis. The way that I had this placed on the agenda, we put it under unfinished business, and we had it as adult use marijuana ordinance and application review discussion. Would it be necessary to table it, because I did not put it as an action item, just a discussion item? I think the difference is if
Or
we put it
second
for,
reading.
yeah, if we
Right.
put it for an action item, then yes, it would have to be tabled or voted on, but I don't know if we need a table necessarily, because it was just a discussion item.
Well, why wouldn't there be a motion that the city commissioners would like to see the remapping at the next meeting?
There we go. Yeah, instead of a table, I think that's more, possibly more
Understood.
appropriate.
Yeah. I see that it's not listed as second reading, right?
But before we do that, we've got the 10-page ordinance in front of us, which is very robust, like they had said, and then we've got a 7-page application in front of us. Was there, and I know Rita had brought up about the handicap parking, is there anybody with any other questions regarding the ordinance or the application, something so when it comes back again, any of those additional items can be addressed?
I did have one. In regards to the beginnings of the ordinance, we get into definitions. And under number 5, marijuana accessories, it includes any equipment, product, material, or combination of equipment, products, or materials which is specifically designed for use in planting, propagating, cultivating, growing, and so forth. A lot of the accoutrement used in growing marijuana is used in regular gardening This would not touch that in any legal capacity, correct?
Correct, and that's just, that is the exact definition out of the state law.
And as we go forward with the type of spaces that would be regulated, such as no grow ops,
Right.
does that touch upon the state laws allowing of individual growth under certain conditions? They can have, I don't remember how many plants it is, but individual.
72.
Yeah.
That none of this impacts.
Thank you.
Those rights. You're talking about, I mean, under the state law, where the state granted the right of marijuana to be, I mean, individuals can grow their own marijuana up to a certain amount of plants with certain restrictions on where those plants can be located.
Yeah.
So, I mean, people in communities at their homes can be growing their own marijuana.
So for a point of clarification, as we're looking at the section in the ordinance, at least that was proposed and was in the first reading, under C, location permitted, and 1, setbacks, I would assume we're looking at maintaining then A, which is the 500 feet boundary from designated residential zoning district.
Yep.
We would retain B, which is 500 feet from the nearest lot line of any residential home structure. That covers the townships and the non-conforming. Would we then be proposing any increase from 500 to 1,000 for the church?
No.
Portion, okay. And then keeping the same for licensed alcohol drug rehabilitation center?
Correct.
Lot line of childcare licensing?
Correct.
500 feet from lot line of preschool, is that changing, staying, or going to 1,000?
We would be revising for all K through 1 to be 1,000 feet.
K through 12.
I'm sorry, K through 1? That's not a long
K
time,
through-
is it? That's about what I did, apparently. K through 12.
And we would be adding then mental health facility?
1,000 feet.
1,000 feet, okay. I just wanted to make sure because we would need that change to F, and we would have to add G, which is the mental health
Correct.
facility.
Well, just for clarity, K through 12 is the only thing that's mentioned in the state law.
Well, we would just use the exact language out of the state law.
Yes, that's what I would at least.
And that would
like to see.
replace,
Okay. So,
Personally
yeah.
speaking,
Yep, okay.
just say,
I'd like to
use
s-
state language.
Yep, okay. So there is no change for mental health facility. I know there had been a question raised before about community mental health, which is now located on King Road as of last year. But I just want to make sure that we're not doing any language piece for that.
that was not my intent. My intent was to meet the state law specifically, and then maybe add a G that says that it shall not be located within any area zoned residential. I think it's sort of inferred from B, but
A and B?
Yeah, we can take the last two items and make them the two items right out of the state law.
yeah,
Okay, perfect.
I think that would be
Just
wise.
want to make sure we were clear on any changes we need to
And we will
make.
use those items to bring you a new map.
Correct.
Well, you're talking the 1,000 feet from the property line, the zoning, right? Not to the building.
Right.
Yeah, to the property line. So that's another area that, I'm not a lawyer, but it didn't seem to specifically
I think we say.
overtly lay that out. I mean, it does say from the nearest lot line. I
Yeah.
feel that's good. If that's strong enough in your mind, then that's fine, but
Yeah, I mean, I was never a fan of going by structure because structures move within the boundaries of a lot.
we received a printed email of something along those lines.
Right.
But what may be required is to orchestrate the lot, correct? You would need to buy multiple, I mean, the way
Right.
that it's mapped right now, you'd need to buy multiple lots and get your boundary redrawn to physically be within,
Yes,
correct? Yeah.
yes.
Gotcha. Okay, thank you.
Okay. So we just need a motion to restructure the buffers and bring back a corresponding map.
I'll make a motion that we request the city manager engage with the GIS service to create a map that draws 1,000-foot boundaries from K through 12 schools as per the state law, and omits any residential areas, which again, I think we're covered for, but areas zoned specifically residential for the next meeting.
And I will hope, I mean, we'll be contingent upon being able to get that from county GIS, but I will work with Mr. Davis. He'll send me the corrected language. I'll forward it immediately.
I'll actually amend my motion to say at the GIS facilities, pending their availability and ability.
Thank you.
All right.
Support.
Okay. Any further questions? Any discussion? All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
All right, on to 11C, and we have the ARPA fund allocation discussion.
Thank you, Mayor. Commissioners, I just want to give a little bit of an update on where we are on ARPA spending and ARPA funding. So we are getting very close, or closer every day, to needing to submit our final plan to the state of Michigan by the end of this calendar year. Now, we still have time to make the spend, but we have to have all of the projects off to the state. And we have been working our way through this. Originally, of the $426,000, $426,450.02 that was allocated to the city, we had, through the original request and a subsequent discussion on May 18th, actually planned about $435,000 of spending. Now again, only 3 pieces were initially approved by the commission. $120,000 for police vehicles, $160,000 for wastewater treatment plant screw pump replacement, and 2 ADA doors at city offices at $20,000. So we had allocated originally that $300,000, and that was approved by the commission. Discussions that we had subsequently did not have a formal motion because there were a couple of pieces that were moving. There was a discussion to set aside $35,000 for miscellaneous park improvements. There had been a request for $50,000 for a DPW 1-ton small dump truck, and $50,000 for potential purchase of the Washington Life property. So to provide an update, again, we have had no spend yet on the wastewater treatment pumps, but that is coming in the very near future. Jeff is working with the manufacturer and working with our engineers. And the 2 doors for the ADA have not, for the City Hall, have not been installed. We've gotten some initial pricing, but there are some changes that we feel may be necessary that would change that. Patrol cars were purchased, and they came in under the allocated amount by $5,369.71. And I will get an updated spreadsheet to all of you. There's a lot of pieces that have been moving. So in looking at where we're at on our spend and what we have remaining, and having discussion here internally, we would like to request, at least at this point, that of the original allocation for the 2 doors, ADA compliance of the city offices, that amount be increased to $30,000. Originally it was $20,000, because we would like to be able to partner with those doors, not just the external buttons outside and hardware, but also key fob access into the internal lobby at City Hall. So it's a technology piece. So that would be a request for that. That would bring that total original allocation to about $310,000. Keep in mind, we do have a slight adjustment there, and we'll have final adjustments. And this, I'm not looking for action tonight. I just want to guide some discussion to make sure everybody feels okay, and then we'll clean it up. Would ask for the commission to consider leaving the initial $35,000 miscellaneous park allocations in place and remove the 1-ton dump truck at $50,000. It is really a question of if we can qualify that under the final approved framework for ARPA expenditures. It is one that is, I guess, close, but we also think that that's the purpose of why we have capital improvement funding set aside for water, sewer, streets, and that would probably be a better fit moving forward. And the update on the, as you are all aware, on the Washington Life Center project. I had indicated to the commission publicly at previous meetings that our cards had essentially been shown on any type of offer to purchase. However, the commission, by motion, authorized the city attorney, the city manager, to put a formal proposal in place and submit that to the East China School District, which we did many months ago. However, it seems clear from having no response, was received and no response, that the school district just isn't interested in selling that property. So with that,
or under the terms we said.
or under the terms at least, but we even said open to negotiations, but that hasn't happened. I do not believe that's a viable project anymore, at least in the eyes of the school district, because again, as Mr. Davis had indicated, we gave a price framework, but we also said that we'd be willing to sit down and further discuss, and there is just no movement on that part. Maybe best at this point that we at least remove that title of the Washington Life purchase, and I would then request with some adjustments that we increase the miscellaneous park improvements, and I'll explain that dollar amount in a minute, but we have a technology and computer purchase item in front of you this evening as an action item. That is a qualified expense. I would request that you approve an allocation not to exceed $25,000 of ARPA funding. In the future, we can adjust it on the purchase. In theory, that should leave us about $61,000, $819.73. So $61,819.73, depending where we come in on pricing. As we know, some things may adjust lower, some higher. As I put all this together for you, what we discussed tonight, so you can see it nice and clear, I think the request is going to be to increase that miscellaneous park improvement line item by the anticipated remaining funds we have. And if something should work through, that there is consideration from the school district, or if not, we certainly have plenty of other park projects identified that we could replace, update equipment, be able to address internal bathroom issues with hands-free sinks, make repairs and those type of things. So if everything that I've kind of thrown to you seems to make sense, I will be more than happy to work with Katie, and the two of us will put it together in a nice little spreadsheet with all of the updated numbers. And depending on the action that may be taken tonight on the computers, we'll have that actual number in here. So that'll put us pretty close to what we have left for spend, and it very well, in a generic but qualified framework, be able to get us to a position to submit our final plan, even if we're just calling that park improvements. We don't necessarily have to be that specific. We'll identify by category of what those would be in accordance with the allowable rules. So we want to make sure we get a plan, we don't miss the plan, but I think there are some items that clearly are not fitting and could be reallocated. So that's a lot of stuff all at once. It'd be a lot clearer when it's all in numbers. And if you looked at my little cheat sheet, I've got numbers all over the place, and every time Katie would come in, we'd change numbers. We're in good shape. But we think that there are certain things that certainly need to be put in the proper bucket, and ARPA might not be that bucket, and some other things that should be identified and added in here. And based on where we are with the Parks and Recreation Master Plan, I would expect we're going to see some clear identification of certain needs in parks that we can address from the remaining ARPA monies. Theoretically, it could give us $80,000 or $90,000 of park spend underneath that at the end of the day.
And it wouldn't sorry.
Oh, no, I'm good. Yeah.
It wouldn't if the school board does come back with something. I mean, I think that's part of the problem is, they're a board just like we're a board, and they have to vote on stuff just, so maybe they just voted, we reject. I don't know. I can watch some school board meetings and see if any of that ever happened, but I don't know if we need to just keep sending the proposals until they accept one or not. But like you said, why didn't they even respond with a little bit of feedback?
Common courtesy.
Yeah. And then if the park money is allocated and then all of a sudden they come back with something, it wouldn't keep its use from making that purchase, should it?
Yeah,
lapse, right?
We'd have a broad category of park category, so certainly the commission can make a decision.
Okay.
I also, though, Commissioner, want to point out that in a direct meeting with the school superintendent, she did indicate that of course she would take the proposal, forward and share it. But she said there are some concerns because there is an existing lease or agreement for the Washington Life Center. That may be part of an entanglement that they may not have an opportunity to sell based on the terms of that lease. I don't know what those terms are, but she was very forthright in indicating that we do have an agreement and there are some obstacles here at looking at this. So reach back out, again, give a reminder, but we had put a very good proposal together and sent forward in letter form.
We actually sent it as a letter of intent. I mean, we formalized it to a letter of intent.
But could we now do something to send something to the Washington Life Center? Because I know one of the big issues for them is maintaining that property. That's the big cost for them. And so maybe.
Assume their lease?
Well, maybe we need to talk to them to see what's in their lease that could be preventing it.
Okay.
All right. Approach them
And for
see.
the benefit of the, sorry.
Go ahead.
For the benefit of the public, this is not Washington Life Center itself, but the property to the north of it,
Yeah.
adjacent, that they presently are obligated to care for.
It's a separate lot. Yeah.
Right. Separate lots, fields, and a kind of little
And-
rundown basketball court and.
And let me add to that too, if I can. The superintendent also indicated that those parcels are not divided parcels. So if anything was going to happen, there would have to be a survey.
Yes.
The school district likely would not pay for that survey, and then would have to be a lot split combination.
But I think we
Was that
agreed
in the
that we were
letter?
going to take.
And we did. We had said that
Our
that would be
letter of
covered.
intent, it said we would pay for that.
Right. We indicated that, but that was an issue that would have to be addressed.
Because I believe they have to leave that one section of playground equipment because of the lease they have with the preschool. But the line is really on the other side of that going, so.
We'll clean this up. We'll kind of make it a generic piece, and then myself and Mr. Davis will work at crafting maybe a little, hey, where are we at? Give us a status update on this. But again, the letter was pretty clear of what we sent, of intent.
Now, I do believe our county commissioner for our district has funds available too that need to get used up.
And when we have our discussion as an agenda item at the next meeting on this, think about other potential projects, because we would like to make a request to our county commissioner and get our portion of some of those funds allocated across the district.
Do we know what the amount might be?
I don't have the final amount. It
depends what you ask for.
Yeah.
No, I'm not being, I'm telling you right now. I want to tell you guys as commissioners looking at it, one of the things with these monies is when they first became available, there was like this many things you could do with them, and it was very restrictive. And now it's like you can do all these things, but you can't do, it flipped. The restrictions are now, more what you really cannot do, and then the rest is open season. But you have to spend the money.
Right.
Yeah.
Don't
Use it or lose it.
Don't keep pushing this around.
Yeah.
Get a plan, spend the money.
Yeah.
Or you will lose it.
Give nothing back.
That's right.
So recently, they took out more playground equipment.
Right.
That's on that.
So
that's in
it'd
that
just be
piece.
nice to know some kind of idea of, what
probably
can
get
we
it.
ask?
Yeah.
I mean, what
I'm-
could we build a
We're gonna
building,
feel
or
that
can
out. No,
we,
I mean-
buy a,
I mean, I think the county
merry-go-round.
has maybe $1 million that it needs to,
Yeah, each commissioner was
Yeah,
given an additional $1 million to spend within their district.
Okay.
And then communities just come and make that request, and then it
Right.
goes to
Yeah,
the
just to
board.
get an idea.
And I'll speak with the commissioner and find out if he has any portions that have already been pledged to other communities in the district, and, see what we have left. So thoughts and ideas, and if you have questions, again, on framework, it's pretty broad now. Mr. McBride and I were talking before the meeting. The things that were not allowed before are still there, and they're this little piece, and we know that, and we're shying away from those, from day one. So we can, come up with ideas. We'll ask for money.
Two brief questions on this then. One, I am understanding that we are asking the Washington Life Center about their lease and just continuing that conversation there for the next
Yes.
meeting.
yes.
And then the second portion, with this, do we have a sort of timetable when we need to make the decisions on spending this money, since?
We have to have our plan approved by the end of this calendar year, and then the spend doesn't have to happen for yet some time. but we would like to get that in sooner as opposed to later, because I do believe, as we've seen, some things have come under the dollar amounts, some might be over, and if we have any last money at the end, we want to spend every dime, we have room for amendments and adjustments prior to the end of the year. So I would hope that we can have everything in place by April of where we are on this, and then those projects will probably be determined, decided, and mostly paid out by September 1st. That gives us still time for anything that's left remaining.
Yeah, and it just, my caution was is that, you're subject to meetings and processes.
Oh, yeah.
And these things can take time. It's not like at my house, the money's gone before I get home. So I just don't want you to keep kicking it, because each time it's a 30-day cycle. Or
The budget process, that's a really good spot, because we'll know more there too.
Yeah.
Okay, and that'll be coming up.
Thank you.
I'll fill out late purchases, we can try to get in there for that. Okay, on to 11D, the tablet purchase, with CDWG. And for that, we'll go to city clerk or city manager.
I'll lead in with, there is an eloquent memo that's been put together by the clerk requesting the consideration of purchase using the ARPA funds for Surface Pro tablets. Again, they do meet the requirement underneath the framework of ARPA funds. But for more information, I will gladly turn this over to the city clerk, who has been price shopping under government purchase framework for us.
So with this purchase, the research kind of came about, hand in hand with going to Granicus and the Peak Agenda and Meeting Minute software. I did a lot of research over the last few months with this on pricing. Did find that a vendor we currently work with, CDWG, is a Michigan Master Computing contract through My Deal for the state. This pricing, it fluctuates, it changes. But I looked everywhere. I looked Best Buy, Microsoft directly, Amazon. This was the best price, whether it was by $75, $25. It was the best price. Commissioner Ross had reached out with some more information on that. I did look into it a little further before the meeting, and we wanted to compare apples to apples with it. And directly from Microsoft, with that purchase being cheaper, the quote you have in front of you is for the Surface Pro 9 for business.
Okay.
So that Windows 11 software specifically geared towards business.
I figured as much.
Yeah.
Thank you for even checking.
Well, and that was, to me, my eyes kind of went, oh,
Yeah.
hey, that's a heck of a better price on it. But
I thought it was maybe the color. It wasn't hot mix or anything, but it was platinum instead of graphite.
which is weird. You see that all the time with another fruit type electronics dealer. But so I did do pricing on that too with it, and for directly through Microsoft, it was $1,200, I think. So with CDWG, you were saving about $75 with that. As City Manager Atkins discussed, this does fit under the guidelines of the ARPA funds to allow us better functionality with technology, decrease hand-to-hand contact, all that under those guidelines of those ARPA funds. And it makes it easier for us, to communicate as a commission. And this would be for the commissioners, for the city manager, myself, to help integrate the Granicus product and the Peak Agenda product for you guys to get it, go paperless, reduce the carbon footprint, and everything else. That's great.
Did the police chief get a new computer too?
I'll let the city manager.
If he's nice, we have a little buffer in this to be able to do that. And likely, we would. We have a buffer for department heads, and he has an expectation, as well as DPW superintendent, to also integrate into the Peak Agenda management program, and some other programs are rolling forward. So yes, in likelihood, we will cover some department heads. And I want to reiterate something that the clerk had mentioned. CDWG is using a bid under My Deal, which we are a member of now, meaning My Deal has already gone out and gotten the lowest competitive pricing from multiple vendors. So the price that's offered here is that state My Deal bid. They've done our work for us instead of us having to go out for bids, and have achieved the lowest price.
It satisfies your bid requirement.
I do have one brief concern with this. Being part of a university in which everyone has technology, there's always needs for an IT department to step in to solve some sort of crisis everyone is always having. What do we have in place to keep up training on using such a device, or making sure that they're functioning, or helping out a crisis before a meeting when someone's expecting to use it and there's loss of functionality?
So if it's something that happens during a meeting or spontaneously, what you've got is what we have in our skill package, but we do have a contract with a local IT group, which is High Tech. We've had on board here for a number of years. So we have a service contract with them. They do all of our heavy lifting on technology, security upgrades, network management, individual tablets, PCs. That's part of our contract and service agreement. But if we had something that occurred here tonight that we weren't able to kind of fix on the spot, we'd be putting in a service ticket for them. And if our meeting goes long enough, they could potentially be here to fix it during the meeting. If not, it'll be taken care of tomorrow. And they've been good in responding to what we have. But again, they're not, they're not available for us for special meetings or things unless we request it in advance. We had that demonstration at one time here, right, Chief? He's not listening, and that's probably good, but we got through it, so.
Thank you.
Is the intent too that you're gonna utilize the screens more?
Yeah, and you noticed in the past couple of meetings, Commissioner, we have started to use these more often, and we're working on integrating to where
Public should be able to follow your agenda.
the agenda management system, when it's fully up and operating, the public will be able to follow this, and it will integrate into CTV.
Nice.
So we're working on all those pieces.
Very nice.
So, yeah, it's a good thing.
And I'll have to tell you, I mean, I was here when they tried this the first time. But those things were really pieces of crap. I hate to say it that way, but they were.
I think they've come along.
Yeah, well,
Yes,
these
they
are far
have.
more advanced.
Yes, I'm just saying they were small, they weren't very good, and everybody gave up on it. And I know these are a whole different animal here, so.
And with this too, Commissioner O'Brien, kind of touch on yours as well, like with the training and stuff, as, you know, as we get these and we integrate them into what we're doing here and the agendas and everything like that. I'd like to put together, whether it's a workshop meeting or something, you know, a training session before one of our meetings, to kind of show you how to not use a computer. I'm sure most of you know how to do that, but kind of show you how to use that software and those applications for Granicus itself to your advantage with it on that aspect, so.
The concern's largely just putting an undue strain on our staff already to have to do more to support us while we're trying to support you.
We really just need to have someone Caleb's age at every meeting.
They can fix it.
Right.
I was going to ask if the middle line item, the 3-year complete for business protection plan, was some sort of kind of tech support, or?
I think that covers more of the, I guess, wear and tear, for the lack of a better term, or if there's any damage to it or anything like
But
that.
it's like the extra warranty, or the extended warranty.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, and I think at this point it's wise with, you know, checking them out or loaning them out to each commissioner, or even ourselves as department head, city manager, that drops, falls, spills, those things happen, so.
I'm right here, Jason. I'm right here.
I looked that way. To the back corner.
He's not paying attention again.
Anyway.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you for putting this together.
You're welcome.
Thank you. All right. And I have a motion then to approve the purchase of the Microsoft Surface tablets, accessories, and warranties from CDWG in the amount of $22,388 using ARPA funds.
Do we first need to waive?
No, it says here you don't have to.
Oh,
Excuse me, Madam Mayor, you may want to just amend your motion to add from CDWG under the My Deal Cooperative Purchasing Program. And that then takes care of that waiving of bid. It's technically in the motion.
Okay. Then can I have the motion then to approve the purchase of the Microsoft Surface tablets, accessories, and warranties from CDWG under the My Deal Cooperative Purchasing in the amount of $22,300.88 using ARPA funds?
so moved.
Support.
Okay. Any further discussion? Roll call, please.
Commissioner Rourke.
Yes.
Commissioner Ross.
Yes.
Mayor Vandenbosch.
Yes.
Commissioner Bryson.
Yes.
Commissioner Hendrick.
Yep.
Commissioner Clausen.
Yes.
Commissioner O'Brien.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, on to item E, the 303 South Water Street sale proceeds discussion. And for that, I will down to you.
This topic, we agreed last year would resurface at the beginning of this year, because we have these funds segregated, but we have not taken any action on them. And it's okay. Just because some of you are new, the bequeathed property was not really the 303 Water Street. There were two lots, and those lots came into the city, and then the city sold those lots and made some money. And then we bought 303 using the proceeds along with about $4,000 out of the general fund. So back in 2022, I had told you that we need to do something with those funds, and it was my opinion that the city's general fund needs to be made whole, and then the balance of the money, whatever it is, needs to be used for the purpose of a community center. So I had given you 3 financial breakdowns that would have to be adjusted, but basically the 3 scenarios were return the $39.75 to the city, add in as number 2 the improvements that the general fund paid for with respect to the property, or you can just allocate all the proceeds, to a new community center. And I've given you the entire history, all the bequeathing documents and all the sales documents. I worked with Curtis on getting you some financial figures last year. So I don't think you have to necessarily make a final decision with all of the money, but it might be wise shortly to take action and return what should go back to the general fund, and decide if the money returning to the general fund should also include the money that the general fund paid for to maintain the structure for a certain amount of years, only through 2005, roughly 2006, and Curtis and I have, attempted to put those figures together. And then you would still be left with a balance. And what you do with that and how you put that towards the community center, I think, is something you all need to think about and come up with a decision. But I think we should give some thought to at least making the general fund whole from that transaction.
Could you resend that so that anybody that hasn't seen it can?
I did recently, but I can do that, yes.
Have
But
you
the
seen it?
numbers-
I don't think I've seen that.
But the numbers need to
Sean.
be updated though, or,
Yeah, well, when you decide we need to take the 39.75 and adjust it to current, to current values, right? Then we need to add potentially, if you want, the operating costs paid out of the general fund for a certain amount of years, and maybe return that amount of money to the general fund. Then there leaves a balance, pretty significant balance. And then you can hold that money in this segregated account, keep it in the segregated account until you decide how and when you want to apply it to a community center. But I think it has to go to a community center.
It does.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, Sean never
Yeah, I don't think
received
I
that, so I prefer that he sees that and been able to read it and.
Yeah, so Sean, I would be sending you a memo dated July 20th of 2021.
Okay.
And a memo dated November 10, 2022.
Okay.
And I'll get those off to you, and then we can talk about this maybe at the next meeting in greater detail. If the commissioners would all like to receive it again, it's not that difficult.
Yeah, maybe just do a commission-wide blast.
Yes.
Okay, I'll send this information to everyone again, and then you'll be fully armed for discussion.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you.
So we could actually use whatever money we don't allocate back to general fund, plus maybe some county ARPA money, and build a community center.
And you would then you're gonna be positioned to do what you think is right.
Right, okay.
And currently, just for the public's benefit, entirety of the sale money was put in a special fund,
Right.
not to be touched.
Yeah, it's been sitting there.
It's been sitting there since the sale.
Yeah, because it should be used for.
Correct.
Right. Okay.
All right.
All right, on
Then we're
to,
gonna discuss this at another meeting, or?
yeah, he's gonna
Forward.
they're gonna resend the information for everybody to look at again, and we're gonna bring it back up.
Do you need a motion to request that you resend the?
No.
Just checking. Thank you.
All right, on to 12 for new business. 12A, the ordinance 02-2024, the winter parking and snow removal, first reading. Do we want to do the motion and the discussion, or is there something that needs to be discussed first?
I believe that the memo is pretty significant in explaining what has happened. And as you all know, we haven't had much of a winter, well, until this morning, I suppose, and still not much of a winter. But changes that were made several years ago basically caused the removal of the entire ordinance out. So this picks back up some pieces that make more sense for winter parking and adds language back in for a snow emergency that maybe we'll use in 2025. I'm not quite sure, but I'd be glad to answer any questions, but it has been reviewed. I do want to make a note that in the conversion, by the way, of the Word document to the city clerk and converting to a PDF, technology sometimes does its own thing. I can assure you, there was a spell check, a grammar check, and there were no odd question marks, exclamation marks, and things in the previous version that are here now. Those will be cleaned back up. We'll probably just do a simple scan of that document, but it converted, and yes,
It doesn't
again.
like TIs.
Yeah, apparently not, yeah, so, a lot of question marks, but we'll have a cleaned up version for the final, and we'll scan it a different way, rather than let it do its own thing through Adobe.
Well, I got a couple things. First, we used to have a rule that if they had to get off the street and they don't have a drive, that we allowed them to park, and I didn't see that.
On their property?
Yeah, it's not in,
Yes.
we can add that, but we would allow them to park on their lawn, on their
For the
grass.
amount of time.
For the amount of time that it takes for the street to be cleared, so there's no, we can add it in, but there's no penalty if they do that, and that was not our intention to penalize
No,
anybody.
but a lot of people, they get tickets now if they park on their front lawn.
We
So
can add a paragraph into
You need to
that.
make sure,
So
we
you want-
added that in
You want
there.
that provision in there?
Yeah, because otherwise,
No, it's no problem.
you know.
I think that would make sense to probably add under 70.052, just as a separate sentence in there. That's where it's talking about the parking prohibition, but we can put, in such an event, and then also reiterate and add that, I believe, in .053 as well, in those situations, to let them know that it is allowable in those conditions
During the emergency.
during the emergency, or, again, during that daytime when 2 inches or more of snow is present. If they don't have anywhere to park, they can certainly park in the lawn. We can add it in both sections.
All right, but if there's 2 inches or more, you want everybody off or they could get a ticket.
Theoretically, they could. I don't think we have enough resources. I hate to say this, we don't have enough
Well, that's what I'm
resources to
saying.
ticket.
You're gonna have a lot of people that
Yeah.
are just not gonna be able to do it.
Really, the purpose is to try to encourage them to move off the streets during the daytime in which the, DPW is generally working and can clear the streets. It's not a ticket generating device, and that's why when you look at, even when there is a ticket issued, it's a minimal cost on this
Yeah.
piece. But the intention is, help us,
Yep.
get off the street so we can plow the streets. You all have seen, even with the small snows we've had, when vehicles sit there and then they leave, we have piles of snow around where the vehicles were at.
Or they get plowed in and they're gonna have an issue
Yeah.
if there's a lot of snow. But I mean, one of the big things, the reason why they got rid of the original one is the parking permits. And we're not
Right.
going back to any
No.
parking permits, so nobody fret. You're not gonna have to get a parking permit or anything else. Just But we gotta have a good way to notify everybody. That'll be the other thing.
Yeah, I have a question.
And we're
Can
working
we
on that piece.
Sneak into the county system or ask them, for all the people that are signed up, to put our emergency?
Yeah, we have an
out?
ability to work with the county emergency management through winds, and especially on snow
snow.
emergencies.
Yep.
But as part of upgrades that we're looking on our website, and I think I mentioned before, we're looking at trying to get a citizen activation system by email, by text, by phone calls, that when we have these, we can do that blast instead of being dependent on going through the county wind system. And so the police chief, fire chief.
Yeah, but we might want to do both considering where people might live or not live or.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think it hurts, and I know certainly on the snow emergencies. And then we also want to be able to have a slide, and we'll work with CTV, that essentially, particularly like a snow emergency, we can freeze the screen, have this slide up for you know, a period of time, so people are just seeing that provision, and then go back to regularly scheduled programming. But when that impact happens, when it's issued, we want to do as much as we can to get that out.
Is that something Granicus can do? Do they have a?
So they do have a
text
module.
blast system?
We had a web, a Zoom call earlier today on that portion. to tie it in.
Something like people could go on the website, opt into, or what have you, enter your phone
exactly.
number in it.
Yeah.
Great.
Exactly.
Okay. Yeah, the more ways we can get it out, the better, I think.
Which may be also ARPA qualified.
Yeah,
Okay.
excellent.
Great.
Yes, because that was always a big complaint in the past, too.
Yeah.
Just about everybody has a cell.
All right, with that, can I have a motion to approve ordinance 02-2024, an ordinance of the City of Marine City, St. Clair County, Michigan, to establish winter parking and snow removal, Title 7, Chapter 70, entitled Winter Parking and Snow Removal.
For first reading.
For first reading.
Right.
So moved with the addition of a paragraph permitting parking on lawn or property through the duration of the winter plowing.
Correct.
Support.
Okay, any further discussion? Roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Ross,
Yes.
Mayor Vandembosch,
Yes.
Commissioner Bryson,
Yes.
Commissioner Hendrick,
Yep.
Commissioner Clausen,
Yes.
Commissioner O'Brien,
Yes.
Commissioner Roerig.
Yes.
Motion carried.
All right, on to 12B, discussion 300 Broadway future plan.
So I asked for this to be included. I know this is going back several months. I can't even remember when we did this. But we as a commission asked the 300 Broadway Committee to provide us a report with kind of a vision for the property, what's going to take to get us there, et cetera. I mean, this is probably at least 6 months ago, if not a little longer. And now, in light of our kind of getting kicked in the teeth a little bit with not getting this grant, I think this is even more important than ever. So I'd kind of like to re-envision what I would like to see in that report and kind of get it moving again, because I think it's important. It's hard to figure out how to get there if you don't know where you're at and where you want to go. So my thought was first to have a section on a vision for the future use of the following spaces, and I can send this out so you don't have to write it down. The main floor, including probably the jail cell area, what used to be the teen zone area, and then the second floor opera house. I'd like a section to identify if any significant problems currently exist that threaten the stability of the structure or any significant damage, like a roof leak or a broken window, something that's going to get to cause the building to deteriorate. A section with just a notional budget for maintenance, for what's this thing really, what should it take to at least maintain it per year to keep it from deteriorating further? Let's see, a section on the current occupancy and use restrictions on those, again, those three spaces, the main floor, the ex-teen zone area, and the second floor opera house. So what is the occupancy, what can they be used for based on fire code, ADA compliance, et cetera. Because I think somewhere we need that spelled out, what can it be used for today? Two more, sorry. The next is to identify the required repairs or modifications to the following spaces to support the visions that, been hopefully previously laid out. So again, it'd be the main floor, the X-teen zone area, the second floor opera house. I'd also include the basement if we need, HVAC upgrades or something like that. The ancillary indoor areas, like I know there's that little apartment up on the second floor, as well as the exterior. And then lastly, I would like to also request an itemized cost for each of these repairs or modifications. And my intent is with this is I would like to see this become almost a living document that gets updated every great once in a while. And what the nice thing is if we get this in place and everyone blesses it off, now it can be referenced in the Parks and Rec plan and the master plan that will aid in going after future grant opportunities, because you can say, yes, our master plan points to this document, it's in there. And it's going to be much easier to update this document than it will be a master plan. So, I mean, that's kind of what I would request. I mean, I don't know, I know you guys have done, 2 grant applications now. I know you probably have a lot of this already. And it's more of probably compiling it than anything else. I mean, what's a reasonable time frame, do you think, for getting something like this together? 2-3 months?
Speaking for, my position on the committee, I think that would be reasonable, 2 to 3 months. That'd be 3 meetings. To be fair, though, I mean, one of the things we were really waiting for, we did. We had all this effectively by submitting 2 grants, grant applications, and, the vision shifted one grant to the next because you do have to tailor it for the flavor of the grant that you're submitting it for.
And I don't mean this to be a slight on anyone whatsoever. I just feel that it does need to be done.
No problem. So yeah, like I said, pretty much all of this exists. Some of the things such as current use restrictions, we were actually requesting, assistance from because there's much debate on it. And none of us on that committee are qualified really to be able to say whether or not, what the use restrictions are. So for that, we'd require help from the city manager, DPW manager, people with more experience in that vein. But yeah, pretty much all of this we have, at least in one form or another, from the previous grants. And again, like you said, the kick in the teeth was that we found out that we didn't get this one. Now, that said, I'm wondering if the people that did get it hadn't applied for 10 grants previously. So it never hurts to keep submitting grants. Just because you haven't been accepted for one doesn't mean there's more, money out there elsewhere. So
absolutely.
I think that would be something good. Now, 2 things that I feel that are beneficial that have come out of this, and one of them was mentioned earlier tonight. We have, by motion of this commission in 2015, selected the Friends of City Hall as basically a fundraising arm of the city for the benefit of this building. It was done by motion. I printed it out and submitted it. Jason even printed it out for the 300 Broadway committee. I can furnish everybody with a copy of that if you so desire. Scott has it as well. So that motion was made, and then the historical, that's for capital improvements. The Historical Society has submitted that they would like to be the, big project maintenance fundraiser for the same building. So we have 2 groups in town that are, wholeheartedly willing to contribute towards the preservation and benefit of this building, which I think are 2 great things. I think they're coming together as a bit of a team, again, with Friends of City Hall being the capital improvements arm and the Historical Society of Marine City being the large maintenance items arm with their endowment. Those are 2 great things. They won't necessarily come to fruition immediately, But there's that. And yeah, from the current use restrictions, again, that's, there's things that we could do that would conceivably immediately make it ready for use. But there's a lot of range of what those necessarily need to be, and it's very difficult to get confirmation on what is actual and what is supposed. So that we could definitely use help with. But yeah, we could make that list. Because that's actually a thing. We have the same question and we haven't gotten an answer. And this is no slight to anybody on the staff, just maybe what we need to do is hire an engineering firm or somebody, to make those judgments for
And
us.
that, I would also request, if you think you need some third party to come in and help with those answers, by all means, send the recommendation up to us, and we can, I don't think that would be a stretch to have someone come and help, it's help the city as a whole figure that piece out.
So what I think we could do is if we could introduce that as an agenda item for the next 300 Broadway committee meeting, and then be given 2 more meetings to finalize that, 2 to 3 more after that. So that'd be 3 to 4 months by the time we finally came back with a recommendation. But that'd be my request, but it's, I'm at the whim of the commission to do, or that committee would be at the whim of the commission to institute a time frame with which you'd like to see that.
Commissioner Hendrick.
Can I add a couple things? Mold testing and possible remediation, if there's any asbestos. And I think you need to do a thing about ADA compliance, because that's the big reason why you can't use the building.
Right, that's what we need help with. That's
And-
what we've asked about
Yes.
and hasn't.
And it's funny that this came up, because I'm in the process of going through lots of old papers and stuff. So we have been out of that building since 2005, 19 years, and we're still sitting here talking about it. But I do have a whole lot of stuff from the engineering firms and all this discussion of, there's a lot of information in here that, because we did have reports done. The engineering firm did it, Tetra Tech did one. There's been other ones in here. There should be a lot of information in a file, whether it still exists or not. Yes, and that's why,
Sorry. May I scan that for the purposes of distributing it to the commission, or would you be willing?
there's all sorts of good stuff in here. There's even a section when they did, I found this one, when they replaced the roof. Phil Belcher, who was our assessor, there's all sorts of great stuff in here. So, yes, I can give that to you if you gotta.
Or Commissioner, we can scan it here and we can send it to all of you.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in here.
Yeah, run it through the,
Use
run
our
it through the
funds
machine.
to do that.
Yeah, there's a lot of good stuff in here, and there's a lot of things that got explained about some of the structure in that. At least this is the stuff there's probably more out there, I'm sure. But this is the latest that I found, which really does pertain to it. But, yeah, it's a shame, 19 years. In fact, they even tried the insurance company, who refused to repair it. And they used their little bunch of crap to say they weren't gonna fix it. It was interesting. So there should be a lot of information. There should be a lot of reports that still exist somewhere. I don't know if you can still get a hold of Michael Kirk or Tetra Tech, anybody there, see if they've kept any of that stuff. But there was, and there's still old plans and stuff. I think I even have a set of those. And
Michael Kirk, we did have a meeting with, and he mentioned that, there's sort of 2 options for ADA compliance, one being an elevator that would hit all floors, and then another being a chair lift. We're not talking the one you get out of your wheelchair and you sit in the seat and it winds you up the stairs. It's actually a platform you wheel onto, it raises you to the next level, and you go on.
We tried to explain that to one of our former city managers about doing that with the Guy Center, because they're very reasonable versus an elevator.
Sure.
And, that's why some of that stuff got overly, the numbers came in so big, but if you look around, there are alternatives to try to find ways to do it.
Right.
But yes, I can pass that
So
mess
that,
down to you.
that'd be appreciated. And then, again, most of the stuff exists. It was a big blow learning about the grant, fully agreed, but that's been the mission of this. And, I mean, one thing I think that the mission of this committee has been all along is to bring together all of the groups that care about, want to see the future of this building restored, and in some way, shape, or form. And I think it served to do that. I mean, even Georgia mentioned tonight that it really has. There's been a huge resurgence in the Historical Society post-COVID, and I think it's a really wonderful thing to see, so.
And the maintenance, that building, there's nobody in it right now, right?
Friends of City Hall does meet there monthly, so.
I'm just wondering what they're doing.
Really, nobody should be in that
With the
building.
heat and stuff. And if you're gonna, that got sprinkler system in it now, you don't wanna drop the heat down too low or drain the system. Once you're gonna drain the system, then you can't use the building. That's why the sprinkler system is in the building. But I had a shopping center that one of the valves froze, and then I got a call from the police. The water was running out of the front door.
It actually did have an issue. The part of it's supposed to be dry, part of it's supposed to be wet. Jeff has been just a godsend in terms of checking on the building, making sure it is a city asset, so he's within his right to do that.
Yeah.
And has just done an absolutely spectacular job of making sure that the building is, that the fire suppression is working properly, that heat is on, and that furnace filters are checked, because that was one thing that had screwed stuff up. He had the, he had an HVAC firm in to check on it. Again, all just within regular low-dollar maintenance things that were
I'm
done.
sure you don't shut off the air pressure in the dry system, because the
Correct.
diaphragm will open up and then flood everything with water.
Right.
So.
Well, it has a compressor too that puts it all up there.
Don't
so.
shut that compressor off.
Right.
But the concern is the liability that people are still meeting in a
Sure.
building that we need, so I think that.
They do have, Friends of City Hall is writing a kind of indemnity letter, which they all would plan to sign if that's amicable to the commission or the city.
I would prefer that our city manager look at that and check with insurance companies and everything else, because that, you get into some serious issues with.
I've recently had some discussion with Mr. Davis. We are lacking, there's an access control issue because we have a lot of people who are getting in and out. I've talked with Mr. Schmidt on that piece. I've talked with Mr. Davis on language that was in a previously existing agreement between the city and Friends. That was great language, good job, Counselor, that we're missing right now. I mean, they're really, technically at this point, nobody should be in the building because we have no indemnification or agreement. But that does not mean that something can't come in front of this body for consideration. It is a risk and liability for us, and even at the recent festivities that were there, we did have some use that was allowed in the former teen zone, but myself, the police chief, and Mr. Schmidt were in the building, and often we hear voices in our heads, but real voices this time.
Yeah.
There were people upstairs in the building, there were people in the basement in the building, and they just had walked in through an open door and were all over the place. So
gotcha.
those are things that have to be addressed. They were not in the building very long.
Sure.
They were.
Thank you.
They were open intox, carrying beer bottles. They were
Oh.
intoxicated. We had to ask them
That
to leave quickly.
is a serious
It was
problem.
a huge liability, and we're like, this should not have
Yeah.
happened.
That's
Yeah.
right.
Yeah, wow.
We have to have better security on there too.
For the time being, should we look at getting the locks changed on the
Well,
building?
that has been a long-standing item on the three-way committee meeting agenda, yes. So, I mean, locks changed or some sort of update to the key code pads, yes. That's been a long-standing item for quite a while.
And I know that Jeff is working on that because it really was brought to a new level.
Yeah, that's a wake-up call for sure.
We have to get an agreement in place because this commission voted to terminate the prior
Correct.
agreement, and it could be resurrected and recasted very easily.
It was terminated in April of '22. I did find the documents.
Okay.
In the minutes with the help
So
of the
there's no
clerk.
lease or other operating agreement in place, but if you go back, I don't know if you have a copy of that.
I do not. That would take one.
I have a copy here.
Okay.
You may want to look at it. It's a good starting ground for a new agreement.
Okay.
I would also mention that I couldn't locate a copy here, but thankfully, we had someone who was on the committee back at that time who had a copy, and we have it in our possession.
Okay.
Excellent. Okay.
Anything further? Any motion needed?
No. We good for now? We'll just,
We're good, yeah, it's,
it's gonna go
soon
to
as,
300 Broadway, and then it's gonna come back to us.
yeah, Commissioner Bryson provides that, we're glad to share it and distribute it
I'll
out.
get it out to you tomorrow.
Do we need to provide Friends of City Hall a different meeting space in the meantime?
They could come here.
Is that,
We-
do we need a motion for that or anything, so that they have a meeting space?
It would be nice to have some direction. We can offer up a place. I mean, we have some time, I'm sure, available in this building for the time being. Again, there are significant accessibility issues throughout that building, and without any agreement in place, we don't want to have something unfortunate happen. But I am sure that if the commission agrees, we could offer this meeting location. I don't know how many members meet at one time. We also have the conference room available here.
It's usually 8 to 10 people.
Yes,
but,
our conference
the
room is
next
available.
meeting is this Saturday, so they would.
And that wouldn't happen this weekend because we have early voting that's in place.
Right.
But I would find something safer.
Okay.
Until you can get some type of agreement, you're gonna have to, you know.
I mean, we did discuss that at the last 300 Broadway committee meeting, and Michelle Nichter took it back. She's been diligently working on that, you know. We do not hold the city responsible in any way, shape, or form, and they do have their own insurance, so.
Do we need to make a motion to make the space available with the exception of this Saturday?
Certainly, if that's what the
I
commission.
mean, do we, is that only permissible for them if we make a motion?
I think it would be best to be through this body
Okay.
because you're allowing then use of this facility for them.
I mean, all our other boards meet here.
Yeah,
But they're not an official board.
Yeah.
Right.
Right.
Even though they're not a city board, but if the commission
still use it.
authorizes it
Yes.
to happen, it should be done by motion.
But they can meet in the conference room too. I think it would be sufficient room in there.
That wouldn't work though this Saturday.
Not this Saturday, no.
Yeah, and that again wouldn't work this Saturday because of the open voting, not just in here, but the clerk's office is using things up front. But in other situations, yes, that room would accommodate the number of folks on the committee.
I motion that we provide space to Friends of City Hall when available for their future meetings.
Support?
Any further discussion?
Do you want to make sure that it's due to, I don't want them to take that as.
Yeah.
Right. Well,
That
yeah, I mean,
means that building.
would it be appropriate to say at the municipal offices?
There you go.
At the municipal offices when available,
Yes, I'd support that.
so amended.
Okay, amended and support.
Re-support?
Yep, go ahead, yep.
All right, anybody else? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Carries. All right, on to 13, administrative reports. 13A, the city attorney report.
I'm all set, thank you.
All right. B for the city manager report.
My worker was all set, but I'll try to be as expedient as possible, and I've taken some things off the list. I just want to provide an update to the commission. We had a resident that had some questions and concerns here a couple meetings ago about crosswalk timing, sidewalk access, A-frame signs in the downtown. These had been addressed several times prior to, but having a reminder that there were still some issues. Of course, how it usually works is when you go out and try to observe any malfunction of the two, traffic lights and crossings, they of course do not malfunction at the time that you're out there. So we did notify, though, MDOT about issues, continuing issues, and are requesting a meeting to address those issues. So I'll keep you updated once we have something more in place and some answers. Sidewalk access in the downtown area primarily, we have been out to address that. I met with the code enforcement officer. It's clear direction that he's been going out and meeting with violators that have any outdoor furniture still remaining, if they have any other obstructions in the sidewalks, to follow the ordinances, provide copies of the ordinance to the property owners for compliance, A-frame signs as well. So we're hoping to be able to correct those issues by, again, a friendly notice. Here's the ordinance, here's the restrictions, this is what you need to do. The Planning Commission recently met to review the master plan pre-draft, I guess we'll call it, and the recreation plan pre-draft that is going back to the consultant with quite a bit of input and some other items that will be corrected, brought back to the Planning Commission, and ultimately will end up here in front of the city for some action for a 63-day review. So that'll be forthcoming. I would expect that you won't see that for at least another month and change while those changes are done and around the Planning Commission's meeting schedule. Also, we'll not be having the regular meeting. Mr. Chairman, if I'm incorrect, please correct me. We will be not having the regular meeting next month on the 11th, where it normally would have been scheduled. That meeting will be on March 18th instead. That will still retain the same time, which is a 6 o'clock meeting. And as part of the agenda, there will be 2 items for public hearing. The notifications will be posted in the newspaper, sent out to property owners within 300 feet of each of these. One is a conditional zoning request, or known as contract zoning, for 425 Jefferson, the former Jefferson Gym, for potential use as a small office incubator space. That does fall under our ordinance that we have for conditional zoning, which was put in 2019, so this will be a good exercise of that ordinance and the Michigan Zoning Act, which allows for that. The second item is a planned development. Again, it's a multifamily development under the planned unit ordinance that was also put in place here at the city in 2019. The value of both ordinances is, one, that Jefferson property is residentially zoned. Most schools and churches and these type of facilities are. And if nothing is able to be put in the building, essentially it could be vacant and would deteriorate. Conditional zoning or contract zoning allows the potential, limited use for a specific purpose, and it runs with that use, not with the property. So if that use discontinued, it would not then be a spot zone piece that could be anything in the future. It would revert back to residential. So a good protection for the city. And then the planned unit development is something that I believe, to sum it up, gives us value added, where in this case we have a development that could happen by right under the current zoning ordinance for multifamily. This approach for a planned development allows the city to put in additional conditions. So we can look at extra open space or green space, landscaping considerations, building considerations that otherwise we wouldn't get. And I think I stated to the Planning Commission, and many members kind of stated the same thing. If you have an opportunity where you can get value added and get more than just the basic, I think Marine City is that type of community that should try to get more and value added anytime we can. And in this case, a developer was willing to do that. They didn't have to do that. So it will go through a public hearing process, and then would in both cases subsequently come back to the City Commission for a final approval. Mr. Davis would be involved, certainly in the case of the conditional zoning, for review of that request, which would be converted into an ordinance amendment and adopted by the commission. So they're great tools as allowed by state statute. We've never used them, and coming to a city near you. Engineering interviews. We received 7 responses to our request for qualifications. Mr. Schmidt reviewed them independently and was asked to choose his top 3 choices. I reviewed them independently, and then Commissioner Bryson, on behalf of this group, which I believe I shared with you, independently reviewed. Without having any discussions between ourselves until after all the reviews were done, we really came up with, at least in every case, 2 of the same firms that we felt were very well qualified. And then we're kind of on a split decision on that third piece, but all agreed on bringing the top 3 of the 7 to this commission. I would ask for your consideration to schedule, and we can either do it as a special meeting or adjust the time of our meeting for the 21st of March to begin at 5:30 p.m. We think we need at least a half an hour for each of the groups, so 5:30, 6, 6:30, and then we would have time to have some discussion, and then would put it on a subsequent agenda, probably not that night, to authorize the attorney to work with our top candidate for a contract. But again, very well qualified firms. Would be very helpful, I think, in the case of 300 Broadway in assisting us, because they have a lot of civil engineering experience, architectural experience, and I would like to be able to get a blessing to set that up for interviews, and then I will get you all copies of their in some cases thicker and thickest proposals. We will ask them for the interviews to then bring a fee schedule also, proposed fees. We didn't want to do that initially because we didn't want to, go to that last page and look at price, because we need to look at every portion of this, and especially the qualifications. So I would ask for your consideration there.
Sorry, 21st?
21st.
5:30?
Yeah, our regular meeting night, and I think perhaps we should just do it as a special meeting prior to the regular meeting, because it is just the sole purpose of interviewing the candidates, and it's open to the public.
Adjourn the special meeting and go into your regular meeting.
Correct. And then I'll go through my last items. You can take care of that motion if you choose afterwards. Congratulations to Caleb Rickert, great accomplishments. I learned a lot that I didn't even know. He had so much talent. We knew he was talented, but boy, the accolades and the things that he's been able to do at such a young age is remarkable. And we have so many other people in our community. If you know of somebody that's done something just amazing, let us know. We'd like to recognize them, so that was great. We all know, unfortunately, on the commission, the outcome at a 5 minutes to 5 email from the state of Michigan in regards to the 300 Broadway Community Center grant. We don't have any specific details. Those are supposed to be forthcoming from Laura at Michigan. They did the review on this. They just indicated very basically that they had thousands of applications, billions of dollars. We'd like to know a little bit more. How did we score? Just as we asked for the last, were we missing anything deficient? What could we have done better? Oh, and by the way, can you give us a list of other grant opportunities? Because we were promised that that is also forthcoming. So we'll continue moving forward. Safe drinking water project, still moving through all the pre-engineering. There's been a lot of activity going on. We've had several meetings in the past 2 weeks to fine-tune the plan for approval from the state so we can move forward on the time schedule that the state has set for us already. It's a strange process. They required approval of the proposed time schedule before we even have the comprehensive plan approved. And then we're moving parallel, on the side of finances with the bond council and the finance folks that will be coming to you with additional information, requests, and presentations. So the project is moving forward, and we're providing everything we can. Capital improvement plan, we're making revisions and recommendations that will be shared as part of the budget process with the commission, and especially in the areas of streets, parks, infrastructure, beyond the safe drinking water project. So looking at moving in a new direction of really putting defined projects and timeframes together, and I look forward to having that discussion as part of the budget process. Katie looks forward to it, but she's looking more forward to the money part of it, but we'll have a lot of discussion. And then there were concerns raised by a resident this evening, and I do not have enough time to go through and clarify inaccuracies about what projects were done or not done in the city or not done to the likings. But I do want to address one portion, and it is in regards to the police department and the lobby hours. Our police department is a 24/7, 365 operation. Officers are out and about performing their jobs. They are not always available at the office as far as an officer. You all know the chief works administratively during the week. He is there, and we have a part-time, hourly, not salaried office staff that's there. However, from time to time, emergencies do come up with people's children. They get sick. We've had, as we know, the flu and every other dreaded thing going around. I'm your poster child for that. And there are calls for service that the police chief needs to back up his officers. So there are going to be occasions, even when you have office hours posted, that there may not be somebody at that desk, and that door could be locked. There is signage out there that states if you have an emergency, dial 911. If you have a non-emergency, there's a non-emergency number. And thanks to working with the chief to address concerns, and I'm aware of, and Chief, I believe we've only had 2 incidents that, excuse me, you and I were aware of. One that somebody had left the office for an appointment 10 minutes prior to the end of the day. And then this recent case, which the chief had to leave to take care of other police business 15 minutes prior to the closing. So this is not, coming in the middle of the day and multiple days of the week, but a new notice has been posted, and it is at the police station, I believe now. It's on the website. The front desk serves as an information center to assist citizens who require general information, certain administrative services, gun permits, copies of reports, etc., or reporting non-emergency incidents as examples. Although we try our best to conform to posted office hours, from time to time, emergency situations or short-term staffing limitations may require deviation from the posted hours. Patrol officers are in service 24 hours a day. In the event that the business office is closed, if this is an emergency, please call 911 immediately, and for non-emergency matters, please call, and it has the number 810-985-8115, St. Clair County Central Dispatch. Thank you for your patience. This will now be added, or has been added, to the window at the front lobby, and again, put on the website, because unfortunately, folks, situations arise that are beyond our control, and the priority is the life-saving, matters that have to come first. Or again, if a person, any employee of this city has a family emergency, or if they themselves are sick, or things just happen that were not planned, we have to make accommodations. So it is not a regular habit that the police department is shirking any of their duties of working to address the citizen needs. And I'll also add, in many cases, if somebody has an item that they want to call the police department and make an appointment for, they can do that as well. Chief, is there anything that I missed with that?
No, sir. Normally, a lot of you guys know that I'm born and raised in this town. I'm very passionate about what I do and running the police department to take care of all the citizens. I do apologize that this individual yesterday was inconvenienced. I did check the videotape. It was 6 minutes. They were there at 3:54. So it was an inconvenience, yes, whether it was 6 minutes, 15 minutes, whatever. They still showed up to pay a ticket, and the door was locked. But I'm usually in the office, I 10 after 7 in the morning. I help people before the posted time at 8 a.m. that come to the front door. I still help them. So those times will fluctuate. Just because it says 8 doesn't mean I'm not going to help somebody before 8. I will help them. And vice versa, where I take phone calls, text messages, emails. I even have people show up at my house well after 4 o'clock. And so, because this person's inconvenienced for six minutes, I do apologize for that, but I left to go take care of other business, and it happened. So the city manager and I did work together. We promulgated that little note. Hopefully that satisfies people when they show up to the police department and it is locked. They know what number now to call, and we can avoid these issues.
But you just, in both your, I've lived here a long time, and it's always been that way. When Jack Kelly was here, when Tillery was here, and Kruger was here, it always happens. Everybody always knew the number was on the door. If you needed an officer and the chief wasn't in, you call the number and they'll send a car. I mean, this hasn't changed in all the years. This is not anything new.
Kind of our fault. I guess we assumed people would call that number that's on the door if that door was locked. It was an assumption. Hopefully by posting this letter now, we can alleviate that problem, and people will call. My officers will take pistol permits. They know how to take receipts for people that want to pay a ticket. So these people won't be left high and dry anymore.
One of the bigger problems we have versus how it was years ago is we have the presence of social media, and whether it's a true story or not, it gets a world of its own and legs of its own, and that is in part what happened with this case. That what really happened and what's portrayed online are two different beasts. But once that beast is out of the box, that's why we felt we'll take an extra step to address this, for the public, and that's why I wanted to share it with you tonight. We take it very seriously, and we want everyone to know that there are just situations sometimes outside of our control that these things happen. And it very well could happen here or in any other office setting, because I wish we had the power to control everything in the universe. We just don't.
Well, it's the same with the fire department. Joe's there usually during the day, but sometimes, he's either on a call or he has to go and do business, or, that's the nature of the job, unfortunately.
And I'm sure he's had unhappy folks who showed up for a burning permit, and he wasn't there because he might be out saving somebody's life.
Exactly.
It does
Putting
happen.
fire out.
So, yeah.
Absolutely.
That's all I have. That was a lot of stuff, but thank you for indulging.
Thank you very much. And C, reports from department heads. And don't forget.
I'll go. I'll be rather quick. Madam Mayor, just want to give a reminder to the commission and the public citizens out there. In-person early voting does start this Saturday here at the Guy Community Center in the back, 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. And that runs through February 25th, the Sunday before, yes. You can come in, vote in person during those days. You can also, if you are an absentee ballot voter, you can bring your absentee ballot in and tabulate that yourself during those early voting days too, if you wish. Another thing too, the clerk's department has put together candidate filing packets for the local election in November, August if necessary, and those will be available for pickup. And last but not least, we are finalizing the go-live date for the Granicus Peak Agenda for March 7th. Be live on the website March 4th, we're hoping. The website will look a little different. You'll still see kind of the main function of where you go now for agendas, but there will be a link at the top of that will take you to the Granicus webpage that looks a little similar to your dashboards that you have on your account when you log in. And that will give the ability as well, people can sign up for alerts on there. They can put their email address in and pick which boards. Right now it's just the city commission. They will be notified of when that agenda gets published, so that option will be available once we go live with this on the 4th, March 4th.
Very nice.
And that is all I have for you.
Thank you. I know you've had a lot. You've dealing with not only all the Granicus stuff that's coming along, then you've got not only just normal voting that we've had for years and years, and now it becomes now the early voting and that, and then on top of that, you had to do candidate filing packets for the first time. And I know I got mine, and other people got theirs and stuff like that. So you've had your hands full and then some, so thank you very much for that.
Thank you. You're welcome.
Katie?
New computer.
Just a reminder, 2023 taxes, winter taxes were due yesterday. So if people haven't paid, they for summer or winter, they can continue to pay at City Hall through the end of this month. After that, they would have to go to the county.
Okay.
Unfortunately, nobody has heard her.
They can't hear?
You need to repeat what she said.
Yeah, or you can come up to the podium, and then maybe people haven't seen or know you yet, so.
I try to stay invisible.
If we put it in the box 2 nights ago, are we good?
Katie Posey. I've been here about 8 months now. Nobody sees my face. That's okay. Just a reminder, winter taxes were due yesterday, but summer and winter taxes can still be paid through the end of the month at City Hall. After that, you have to go to the county and pay. I just wanted to remind everybody.
Thank you.
Yep, you're welcome.
Nothing says Happy Valentine's Day better than winter tax.
Okay, and if no other department had reports, then we'll go on to 14 Commissioner Privilege and Liaison Reports, and we'll start with Commissioner Clausen.
Well, our city manager took all my information. He was at the same meeting I was at.
Trying to help you out there, Commissioner.
So everything he talked about being with the, what's going on with the master plan and stuff, and with the contract zoning and stuff, that's all discussed and handled now. Just wanted, it's getting late, so let's be careful driving. There's going to be cold tonight and wind, and so there'll be ice on the roads. You might not see it, but you'll see it when you slide off. So I went in this morning down 26 Mile Road, well, yeah, 26 Mile Road, and then I got into downtown New Baltimore at that curve, and I couldn't even see the traffic light. It was it was a whiteout.
Yeah.
So watch what's going on with the weather. Have a good night.
Thank you. Commissioner Bryson.
Okay, for the Dangerous Buildings Board, we have 2 existing properties on the board that we're hopeful will disappear and come off our work list due to the property owner's work. So it's always a good thing when we don't have to do anything. So my guess is probably July timeframe, everything goes to plan. We did have a third property get onto our agenda that has some severe structural issues, so that'll probably be an ongoing thing here in the next 3 to 6 months. As far as the Charter Review Committee, we did have a recommendation for the City Commission to look into pricing for putting the city charter as it exists today onto Muni Code. And I believe that's to kind of flush out the areas where there might be incompatibilities between the existing charter and current, the law as it currently stands today.
Okay.
And then in addition to that, we did narrow down the areas that we're kind of focusing on to 5. So I believe next month we're going to take a look at some preliminary draft language, and then hopefully we'll get a recommendation to the commission for amendments, probably April, maybe beginning of May at the latest, somewhere in that time frame. So you should be seeing something here in the next couple months. And the goal is to have that, assuming that the commission as a whole is good with it, to have it on the November ballot.
I have this one too.
That's it for me.
Okay. Ryan?
Thank you. It's a bit of a long evening tonight. Sorry to make it longer. So first, I want to thank Katie for all this hard work on the Treasury and the audit. Building that institutional knowledge is key to success of any organization. I've dealt with union budgets far too many times than I would like to admit, and I hate that work, and it's never rewarding feeling. So thank you for doing this and making movement. I think it's important that we continue to offer support to staff and other committees such as 300 Broadway as this moves forward. And mentioning the perils of information getting online and kind of taking on a life of its own. I don't particularly, I'm a teacher, I work in a classroom, I have students, they have to do research. I don't particularly like, advising people just to go like Google information, because it's easy to find poor sources. I pulled some academic records after being, academic reports and research papers after being stopped after our previous meeting. I was asked to look deeper into the dispensary issue. One of the things I found over a course of 55 different research papers on marijuana usage for teens in the last 5 to 10 years is that usage in states that have legalized and set up, whether it's recreational or medical usage among teens is going down. And that's including in Michigan, even in cities that have dispensaries. There is an increase of casualization, like feelings of ambivalence towards marijuana among teens, where it's not a loved or hated thing either way. It's becoming just more casual. And so I want to acknowledge that I took the advice to go look deeper into the reports, and that's what I'm finding online. And I'm happy to share those reports and findings, including the percentage drops and why it is, and trying to account for COVID. Those papers openly are not finding the correlation or the causation. It's not saying that a dispensary is decreasing usage among teens. It's not looking into those causes, but it was tracking reported usages. And I want to acknowledge that the public asks us to look into things, we are, and we should share those findings when we find them. And that's all I have this week.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Ross?
Thank you. To add on to what Jake had mentioned regarding the Charter Review Board, that Muni Code ad may allow for us basically to eradicate current discrepancies that are already footnoted there, saying that, this is basically superseded by some other state act, which is a, big convenience and may not necessitate a future, auditing or changing of, or amending rather of the charter. So that could be a very good thing. And thanks for bringing that up. Otherwise, as Commissioner Clausen had mentioned, yes, be careful out there. It's also midwinter break for East China School District this weekend through Monday. So Be careful, watch for kids, and kids, please be safe. Regarding the cannabis stuff, I mean, again, this is still a free country. This is still we are still serving as your representatives. And if you feel that what we are not doing, or what we are doing is not in the best interest of the city, again, we need you to reach out to us to act as your public servants. So please do that. Please come to meetings, or at least, again, please reach out. My phone number personally is online. Call me, email me, contact us. Let us know your feelings on this. And other than that, have a safe and happy weekend.
Thank you very much. Commissioner Rory.
I'd just like to urge everybody to go out and vote. Your vote counts, especially in local elections, when it's one person can make a big difference. So please get out and vote. That's all.
Thank you. Commissioner Hendricks.
All right, I only have two quick things. The fire department is purchasing a new pickup. We're gonna get rid of an old one. So hint, 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 if you guys are interested and need one for the DPW, we will have one available. But we got a deal through My Deal again, and we couldn't pass it up to try to replace the trucks for the price of trucks nowadays. And they currently are, we're gonna be refurbishing the kitchen in there, because that's as old as the building. So they had gotten some money that was given to them by an estate, and we're using that and a little bit extra, and they're gonna refinish all the cupboards and all the stuff, and that's about the last thing that has to be done in that building. Everything else has been updated, roofs, the tank facility, everything. I mean, we got the generator now, so that building has really been kept in good shape without a whole lot of cost to the community. So that's all I have.
Just have a couple of things real quick. First of all, I'd like to thank again Curtis and Sam for everything you guys do for us, for the auditing, the training, just reaching back to us with information whenever questions come up. That is very appreciated. Thank you again to Katie for all your hard work, and Scott and Jason and everyone, Chief. Appreciate you guys more than you could ever know, more than we could ever keep repeating and saying. We really do feel it. And the city attorney as well. I just realized I left out Bob. We do appreciate you too. And congratulations to our city attorney. He's a new grandpa.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah, grandpa. And a lot of other things I was going to say. Everybody else already mentioned a lot of things. We didn't have a CED meeting. That got canceled on unforeseen circumstances. And city manager and I continue to get notifications from SEMCOG, continue to look for things that would benefit our city, things that we can attend or webinar-based, whatever we can have. And we hope to find more things that we can do that would benefit Marine City through SEMCOG. And with that, we are now at closed session.
We're just going in on the one issue. The legal counsel could not make it. Okay. So we're going to be at the next meeting.
All right. But prior to everybody getting up, was there anybody who was going to stay until after we come back in an open session? We were going to try something different tonight, and I didn't get a chance to warn these guys. So previously, we'd go in closed session, people would leave, go in the parking lot, and you wouldn't necessarily know that we were back in the open session again if you wanted to be here for any action that would happen after closed session, if there was. So based on recommendations from the city manager and the clerk and attorney, we talked about it, and what the commission may do now is we may get up, we may go into the conference room in City Hall, handle our closed session business, then come back out here and then handle it, any decisions back in open session. That way, any audience members that want to stay here can stay here, and you would know that we're back, and you would know if you wanted to watch any of the action instead of getting in your car and trying to figure it out or something. So did anybody want to stay until after closed session? 3 hours and 20 minutes. All right. I didn't say by the audience that there would be, so.
The room will be open,
All right.
the lights will be on.
Yeah, thank you all so much.
Then with that, can I get a motion to enter into closed session?
I'll make a motion that we enter into closed session.
Support.
Under MCL 268H.
Okay.
15.268H.
We're doing B.
All right.
Support.
Yep.
Who was the support?
And support.
Bill. Awesome.
Bill.
Thank you.
All right, roll call vote, please.
Commissioner Bryson?
Yes.
Commissioner Hendrick?
Yep.
Commissioner Clausen?
Yes.
Commissioner O'Brien.
Yes.
Commissioner Warren.
Yes.
Commissioner Russ.
Yes.
Mayor Manabosh.
Yes,
Motion carried
okay.
at 10:24.
Everyone's got to do that.
Liz.
Break.